We are live. Canceled Cast with Cancel Ryan Murphy, and we have our guests here. Phil the Thrill. What's going on, Phil? Endgame, all the way over there. All the way over there. Good to have you guys back. We fucking had a really good one the last one. I really enjoyed the baseball / wrestling one that we did. And this one's sort of like related because we did bring up like the whole Hulk Hogan in Rocky 3.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You know, like we're going to get into a little bit of Hulk Hogan on this one too, because we're going to go through all of the Rocky movies. This is the Rocky Saga movie review. And I have two gigantic Rocky fans on the show, which I'm really pumped to have because I fucking love the movie. It's like, you know,
no more.
Yeah.
No more.
But hey, listen, we're going to do at the end of each movie what I want to do with you two guys also. It's not really like a game, but you could pick your favorite line out of the whole movie. It could be the same as we could all agree on the same line of what the best line is in the whole movie. And because it's quotable as fuck, especially the first movie. The first one, it's like hard. I'm like, what do you do? You know, you can't just go, Adrian. You can't just do that because that's like, you know what I mean? It's you know, there's got to be one better, and then you try to go back during it and stuff like that. So we're going to start with the first Rocky, which it's hard to even make fun of because it's like almost a perfect movie. You know, I mean, it won an Oscar. Fucking Stallone's directorial and writing debut. He wrote and directed this motherfucker, and nobody gave him a shot. And that gave more to the story of Rocky. Now, when was the first time for the both of you guys that you were introduced to the Rocky saga, and what movie was it? Was it the first one, Phil?
For me, yeah. I remember like my dad telling me about it. He's like, you got to watch this movie. And I'm like, I don't know. And ironically, he's the one that got me to watch Braveheart before Braveheart became mainstream. And like when you saw the commercials for Braveheart, you were like, oh, this movie looks corny. And, you know, it wound up being like the most like, you know, like historic or like, you know, watched movies in like our culture. But getting back to Rocky, yeah, he told me, he's like, you got to watch this movie. It's fucking crazy. And like, you know, and he loses, but it's still good. And like it checked every box. And like it had the action, it had the romance of him falling in love, and you know, it had that cliffhanger of like, oh man, like I hope they make a second part. Like, you know, I hope he gets a rematch.
Yeah. What about you, Gabe? Was that the first one that broke your virginity into the Rocky land, into the Rocky world? Was it the first one?
Yeah, the first one. Rocky, the original one was the first one I seen. I was probably about maybe 7-8 years old when I like actually remembered watching it. But yeah, just kind of like what Phil says. Even though at the end of the movie, you know, I'm obviously very young, I don't understand much, but I did understand that he lost.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I was drawn to it right away. The action scenes. I felt like he was very humble, very kind, very likable. A very likable guy.
Great character.
Yeah. Nowadays, it stands as my favorite movie of all time. But I'm just trying to give you a perspective from when I was a child.
But I mean, like when you were a kid, you guys both just jumped on board. I was sold. As soon as I seen like these guys punching each other on screen, that was it. That's all I needed. I didn't even need the story yet. And I was about the same age as you, Gabe. I might have been like 7 or 8 years old the first time I remember sitting through it, because I remember it always being on around me, like not necessarily on TV, but it was always rented. Like that was a re-rented movie from the not even Blockbuster, old school store before they even had Blockbuster in the neighborhood in Bensonhurst. They had just the corner store. You know, with the porno section in the back. You know, the curtain, to go through the curtain. You know, sometimes there was a video game, you know, machines out front. Yeah, but Rocky was, and the subsequent sequels were always re-rented. We re-rented those movies over and over again.
Oh yeah.
I might have been that age too. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I was sold, man. I thought it was, like one of the greatest movies I ever got to see as a kid and an adult. I appreciate it differently as an adult. But it is, you know, even as an adult, the ultimate underdog story. And everyone loves that, like, come from behind, you know, which I know that's why we're Met fans, Gabe. Because we latch on to that archetype, I think, a little bit, me and you. And that's why we get along with our opinions.
Like sometimes. The lovable losers. Yeah, the lovable losers.
Yeah, you know, and Rocky is, I think, the lovable loser was really, you know, like I guess there were characters played in Hollywood before that, but it didn't blow up to its popularity until this punch drunk. You know, he was a gangster thug who just collected money for people. It was what he was.
Loan shark, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't know that he, was muscle for, like I didn't get that. I thought that was just his, because I thought it was his neighborhood buddy. Because growing up in Bed-Stuy, you just thought that these guys were related or they were friends, and it was like, yeah, a guy walked up to the car. Now, after as an adult, I watch it and I seen interactions like that happen all the time, and I'm like, when I was 7 or 8 years old, that guy walked up to that Cadillac, and they passed each other something. It's like, what were they doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Take it to the zoo.
Take it to the zoo, Rock. That guy, exactly. I hated him. I hate that motherfucker. His driver. Yeah. Oh my god.
The way he got under Rocky's skin, though, you got to appreciate it as like a heel. Like he got under Rocky's skin. Like not even Paulie, after all those years, can get under his skin like that guy.
I always like with Gazzo, like when they're like yelling at each other. And Gazzo's like, some guys, they just hate.
Yes. He just doesn't like you.
I don't like your face. I don't like your face.
I don't like your face. Yeah, he got angry, and that's the first time you see him get angry. You really don't see him get angry unless he's hitting the fucking, he's in the, like the meat market with Paulie, or the meat packing plant, with Paulie. So you see, he's nice, he's gentle, he's like, like a gentle giant kind of dude, and he gets pushed around. He's like, how is this muscle bound fucking Hulk getting pushed around like this? Like, how the fuck does this guy survive and getting kicked around? Well, it's like, obviously the backdrop is Philly, grimy as fuck, which I have down here on my notes. I took a whole bunch of notes onto what we should probably hit on, and Philly being a dirty, dirty city
which is still true to this day.
Still true to this day. There's hipster parts of Philly, I think. I think there's like gentrified parts.
But. No, I hate everything. I mean, I think that's the one thing Yankee and Mets fans and any New York fan could agree on is we all hate Philly. The Flyers, the Eagles, Phillies, we all fucking hate every single thing that comes out of Philadelphia.
I can attest from someone who lived there for about 7 years.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It is just as filthy as downtown New York, just as filthy.
I highlight that for you, by the way, Gabe. I highlighted that for you because I was waiting for him to be like 7 fucking years.
Yeah, 7 years, man, 7 years.
So, like, I mean, like you said, like, you continue. It's grimy now as it ever was before. Is it? I mean, like, does it still sort of feel like that when you were living there? Was it still like a like a rough and tumble kind of fucking place when you were living there?
Well, the section I lived in, no. My section was very clean, because I lived in like the downtown, it's called Center City area. Mm-hmm. But if you go to like North Philly, West Philly, or South Philly, then yeah, you definitely see some like rundown areas that look just like, parts of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, everybody remembers the gym and that neighborhood that it was underneath the L. It felt a lot like home to me because I literally grew up underneath an elevated train, right by 86th Street, and I heard the train every day. And that was where the pet shop was. Adrian was across the street. Mick was across the street from each other. So Rocky had that little ping pong thing where he was trying to swoon Adrian with his bad jokes and then go boxing trained for a little while, and then he got bagged by Mick because Mick is like, you're a chump, you're 30 years old, and you're not going to be you're not going for it. Humble. Like, I'm giving the locker to fucking somebody else. I felt so bad. I felt like he was being bullied. I was like, how is this guy being bullied? Because it's almost like every movie's a redemption story.
He's bullied because he's nice, and people take advantage of it. Because they see, like, oh, this guy could probably fuck me up, but they know that he's so nice. Like, Rocky's not going to beat up Mickey.
Of course not. I mean, he's like an 80-year-old man at the time, or 75-year-old man.
But then again, they may not know that about him because they just see him as a Shylock. Somebody who collects for...
Everybody abused him pretty much, and you saw that when he was trying to be the Good Samaritan. And this is another line after I said, oh, Adrian is played out as a line, and I'll ask you guys your favorite line at the end of the segment. But when she calls him a creepo, I'm like, this little twat.
Marie.
Marie, yeah.
Which we'll talk about her later. She comes up later. But she calls him creepo, and I'm like, you're going to call this cavalier dude who's escorting you home after you're pretty much getting punked by your friends, or your friends, and and you call him creepo and she flipped him off. She didn't give him the full finger though. She didn't go like this.
Yeah.
She went like this, which was still pretty bad back in the 70s, I think. You know, but creepo, when she calls him a creepo, that's also another highlighted line of mine too that I'm like, you know, it's so quotable. You could literally just go through the whole movie
and
just,
then right after she gives him the whatever, he goes, "Yeah, who are you to give advice?"
give it
Yeah,
He questions himself. Who are you to give advice?
And he had such a shitty day on top of it too. He was coming off like a shitty day, and like that's the way it ended. He must have been like, "Gee, great. I try to end my day on doing something nice, and I was like a fucking mutt."
What the fuck, man? Like, totally. And it ended like shit, too. And that's when he was like, why don't you go fight Spider Rico? Which is another person I wanted to bring up, too. Spider Rico, I guess, was the guy he always fought in the churches and in the, you know, the amateur circuit and stuff like that. And they really, like, brought up certain points, even when, like Mick comes to ask him for forgiveness because he hears what happened. Now, you hear what happened. They go, and pretty much Creed was the Muhammad Ali archetype, right? Where he's total champ. In that era, you know, which Muhammad Ali was highlighted as being the champ's champ back then. You know, he had his controversy in the 60s, but in the 70s when he made his comeback and all, he really became like that redeeming loudmouth, like where he was like, oh, well, I'm back and I'm back again, I'm champ again. And Apollo Creed, I guess, embodied that success and that, you know, like super athlete, like where everybody revered him and also had a little bit of a distaste because of the way he mouthed off. But he goes and he picks this guy who he thinks he's going to lose to, which is like such the punk thing to do. And I know that you guys, coming from where we come from, if you're going to pick the easier opponent, people are going to call you a bitch. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. And when Mick comes back to him and he comes to the apartment to ask for forgiveness because he hears that he got offered the big fight and Rocky flips on him. How did you guys feel in that scene? Phil, how did you feel like when Rocky lashed back out on him after Mick told him that bad shit, people with the nails in the glove? How did you feel after that outburst?
Well, when I originally watched it from a kid, I took it from Rocky's perspective, and I understood why he was so bitter. Because, you know, he when he got his, you know, basically the way Mickey was like, you know, you should just get out of the business. You're a bum. You're a loan shark. So now he gets this big fight, and everybody wants to latch on. So, like, I could understand Rocky being resentful. And, like, I like that it ended with him running and still saying, like, all right, I need you. Like, you know, even though Rocky got this, you know, opportunity of a lifetime out of nowhere just because of his name, he knew he's like, all right, if I have a prayer of being this guy, I need Mickey. So, I mean, and after watching the movie over and over, you know, you see it from Mickey's side, you know, so it's definitely one of those moments in the movie where it's like it's an emotional pull, like where you could see where Rocky was like, fuck you, like, I got this opportunity by myself. I don't need anybody. I'm going to try to go beat the world champ, and I got nothing to lose. But then, like, him realizing, like, as Mickey's walking out the door, it's like, well, this guy is a good trainer. And if I do really stand a chance, I need this guy.
I need him, too. It jerked the tears on me pretty early. Like, I was like, oh, sort of sad. I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be your friend. Like, I knew precursor that he was going to be his friend. Did you feel that upset too? Like when Mick walked away, Gabe. Like when Mick walked down the stairs. Like how did that fucking kick me in the fucking
the whole scene. I mean, I love that whole sequence of when he comes over because like you basically see him trying to kiss Rocky's ass, and then Rocky kind of like rejecting it. I like the progression of his rejection. How like. You know, first he's trying to like keep himself busy with the darts. He drinks the beer. You know, all those little things to try to get his mind off of it. And then he goes into the fucking bathroom to hide because he gets tired of hearing them. I always like the part when he comes back out of the bathroom.
Oh, because he hears the door close.
Yeah, Mickey makes the mistake of leaving the hat, and he sees them again, and he closes the door again.
Because he's scared too, right? Because he's like scared that he had to just yell at this guy who was like a mentor of his somewhat.
Yeah, like I feel like he was trying to. I feel like at that moment he was trying to hide because he didn't want to explode, and then once Mickey was walking down the steps, he just finally exploded. Yeah. And I always like the scene because, like, I feel like that's the first time Mickey sees his anger. You know what I mean? Because I don't feel like Rocky ever really stood up to Mickey until then.
Never. Because you see, he was still getting pushed around with the locker. He was still getting pushed around. But Rocky did run up the.
I ain't got no locker though, Mick.
I ain't got no locker though, Mick.
I got heart, but exactly, and that's what he said to him. I got heart, but
I got locker. It's another phrase. You see what I mean about it's quotable. We could just quote the whole fucking movie.
Yeah, when he runs back down the steps to ask, basically because he realizes he needs Mickey. If you notice, when he runs down the street and he's like running up to Mickey, Mickey kind of takes a step back, like he wasn't really sure what Rocky was gonna do, and then Rocky extends the hand, they shake, hug.
Yeah, he'd never hit an old guy. He'd never hit an old guy.
But you saw Mickey was a little like
they were the team. They were the team. They were the team. Legit, it was like, and I know you guys, Phil, you had on your show the other day, the Bulls. There was that Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan moment where you knew that they weren't going to win this fight without each other. It wasn't so much like a Phil Jackson coach. You know what I mean? It was like both of their energies fed off each other. And that's what Mick was right. You're going to keep me living. I need to keep living. And the only way that I'm going to keep alive, and this is my last chance too. It's his last chance to dance. It's not only Rocky's last chance to dance, but it was his. And he was falling in love. I mean, obviously, that's the relationship with Mick and Rock. And then you have the other two relationships with Paulie, who's like his rough and tumble best friend, who gives him the entry into that, world famous Heat Locker. What?
I was going to say.
Paulie's been sucking on Rocky's tit for years.
Yes, okay, he's a little bit of a leech, but he loves Paulie, and he fell in love with Paulie's sister, so he was also part of the package deal, because if you married Adrian, you got Paulie. And he wasn't married to Adrian yet, which we'll get into the next movie, but he's in love with her, and he visits her all the time, and I also want to bring up his turtles, because he was telling her to joke in the pet shop, and he's like, what happens when you tap two turtles on the back? He's like, what do they get? Show shogs. Oh, fuck yes. And he goes, sees the dog, he hugs the dog, and he wants the dog, he fucking loves the dog. You know what I mean? Buck Kiss was awesome, which is his real dog. It was Sylvester Stallone's actual dog that he bought back. He bought the dog back. He sold the dog for $25 so that he could pay his rent. And then when he sold the script, he bought Buck Kiss back.
I know. That's
in
awesome.
real life. And that was his real Mastiff. That was his real dog. He falls in love with Adrian. Adrian becomes his whole life. Did they lose their virginity to each other?
I think Rocky probably had.
Rocky lost his virginity before Adrian. They reveal it in part 3. You know that he.
Oh yeah, he had other.
When he bails Paulie out, he tells him about that time he hooked him up with the pregnant girl.
That's right.
That's right. There was that pregnant girl. He's like, yeah. Okay, so Adrian was definitely a virgin. Definite virgin. Let's be honest. But like the movie, the montage. This created the fucking montage. This movie created the montage. The montage. You wouldn't have the Karate Kid montage. You wouldn't have the Top Gun montage. You wouldn't have fucking Batman suiting up without Rocky. The horns. You're not getting that. You're not getting that montage from any other movie until Rocky made the montage, which is probably one of the most awesomest things you could do in a sports movie. That was the origin. I feel like it might be the origin. To me, I feel that if that was the first time I saw that in a movie or a sports movie, and the iconic scene of him running up I think it's the library, right? It's the library in Philadelphia. Art museum. Yeah. And he's running up the steps, and everybody sees him run up the steps, and you know what I mean? And not everybody sees him. We all see him. And it becomes an iconic. You could even see the silhouette of him on top of the top step, and you know what that is. Like, it's so iconic. And it led to that last scene of the movie in the stadium or in the arena, and he's getting ready to fight Apollo Creed, who pretty much handpicked him to take a fall, because Apollo's like, you fought everybody. Fight this underdog because you're going to give them a story. And little did he know that he was going to give the fucking world a story. And it's almost as if like Rocky wrote the story himself, which he did, I guess.
Yeah, you underestimated him.
But that last fight scene to be being choreographed, like what you had before that, when you had kung fu movies and you had cheesy cowboy movies with cheesy like punches, guys overacting, getting hit. And this was the first time anybody really attempted to fucking throw boxing in a movie or fighting in a movie and to react naturally, because nobody falls like Batman like this after they get like stabbed in the face by Bruce Lee. That's not really what happens. Some people eat the punch and take it, and they're hit and they're stunned, but they're not on the ground. So Stallone really wanted that in the movie, and it was pretty believable for when I was, Gabe, like we said, 6 or 7 years old, 8 years old.
Yeah, of course.
Believable. That was more believable than wrestling to me, Phil. I don't know, like honestly, like it seemed even today. I'm sold, but I'm sold because of my emotional investment. Maybe it does look a lot more real the later on we get. Once we get to Creed, it gets way more real. You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You know?
Now it's phenomenal the way they do the scenes compared to
But
back then. Back then it was like it's just a slugfest. Like that most of those things wouldn't be allowed in boxing.
Oh no way! And the way they clinch now, it's like listen, it's an evolving art. They say, you know what I mean. And in real life, boxing is because even still, fight sports is an evolving sport. Also, like in real life, like MMA, even Muay Thai. You get Lethwei. You guys ever look at Lethwei? Do you know what Lethwei is? Yo, you gotta peep that shit. Lethwei is from Myanmar and Myanmar only. In Thailand, they have Muay Thai. In Myanmar, they have Lethwei. And what Lethwei is kickboxing with no gloves, just wraps, like kickboxer. They don't put the glass on their shit, but it's just tight wraps, and they fight with headbutts, and illegal elbows and knees are allowed in Lethwei. So it's like MMA, but they allow headbutts. It's fucked up, dude. And you don't. If you get knocked out, they have 20 seconds to revive you. If you're knocked out, you can fight again. If you won't stand up after a knockout, they allow you to fight again. It's sick. Anyway, that's another episode of CanceledCast. But near the end of the movie,
that sounds awesome.
I want to say, it is, dude. I promise. I'll fill you in on this after the podcast. It is interesting. Lethwei, Google it. Nearing the end of the movie, the build up to the fight, they're both getting their asses kicked. Apollo Creed has a broken rib, which is something that happens again. We end up bringing that up again. It's reoccurring. You get those body shots are devastating, and that's what Rocky was doing in the meat packing, right? He was fucking beating the crap out of sides of beef. He seemingly beats Apollo Creed, except it comes to the last round and the bell rings. Apollo's still champion. But even though we all feel that maybe, okay, you know what, Rocky, lost, he won because he stuck the whole fucking fight through. A verifiable nobody against this this super athlete heavyweight boxer. And it's bittersweet. Everybody's cheering his name at the end of it, which even though technically he loses. As a kid, I didn't understand that. I didn't get that. I got that when I was a teenager, but I didn't get that when I was a little kid. That how did he lose? He's the underdog and he beat the crap out of him. I thought that you should just get the win, but that's not how life works. So it's over. Adrian's calling for him. He's like, Adrian, Rocky, the whole shit. She runs into the ring, and the movie's over. Apollo Creed hugs him, and now this is where I'm going to segue into what I want to ask you guys what your favorite line to the whole movie is. But my favorite line of the whole movie and what made me realize that Rocky in a sense did win was Apollo said, "Ain't gonna be no rematch. Ain't gonna be no rematch." With the mouthpiece still in, tell him he's not gonna get the rematch. And I thought that was my favorite line of the movie at the very, very end because it proved that he told Rocky you did it. He told him you beat me by saying that. What was your favorite line of the whole movie, Phil? How did you feel in that moment at the end when Rocky didn't lose?
I agree with you. I think that is the best line of the movie. But when Rocky also said he didn't want a rematch either, I felt like the ending should have been the fight ended in a draw. I mean, I think it's still the fact that Creed won actually adds more fire to Rocky 2 because now he's got a thing to overcome. Mm-hmm. But at the moment when I watched it, I'm like, all right, it's going to end in a tie and eventually they're going to have a rematch. But when they said that he lost, I was like, what? I was like, at the very least, it should be a tie. But then, they quickly went to the Adrian moment and the way Paulie held the ropes for her. The way it ended was like, you kind of forgot that he lost because it was like, all right, he got the woman, she supports him through the loss, and I guess this is the way the way it's going to end is like
how most life is, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to fall just short. That's the way it's going to be, and then eventually we had to wait a year or 2 years for the Rocky 2, but. Yeah, that's definitely the best moment, I think, by far.
Yeah. What about you, Gabe? Your favorite line, and how did that end scene in the original Rocky make you feel, or how did that affect you?
My favorite line was I actually liked the scene right before the fight when he goes out for a walk and goes to the stadium by himself. And
Yeah.
then when he comes home, he kind of lays down and he tells her he tells her he can't beat him.
Yes.
And then her first thing that she says is, "What are we gonna do? Not what are you gonna do?" She
Yeah.
says, "What are we gonna do?" To show that she's all in with him. So like right there, that she's obviously perfect for him, which is awesome because the love story is important in the movie. Um, like I always felt like that particular scene or him just saying how he wants to go the distance is awesome for me.
Mm.
And then as far as how the movie ends, as a kid, obviously I'm disappointed he loses because I also thought he had a chance to winning. But knowing boxing, Apollo definitely outpointed him easily. But
And he laid more shots earlier on in that fight.
as an adult, I started looking at it more and more like even though he lost the fight, he beat his greatest enemy, which is himself. He had a defeated. He needed belief in himself, and he had conquered that fear. He basically conquered that fear.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely. And that's the story's about, Gabe. Like, it is about conquering the fear of getting over your own self and your own fears. And to top it off, also, he didn't only win. I mean, he didn't only succeed at perseverance. He didn't win the belt, but he did win all of us. Like, we were all sold after that fucking movie. We're all pretty much sold, like, as if he's a real life character. We all pretty much bought Rocky as a real person. You know what I mean? We all bought it as a real person. And it's one of the greatest movies of all time, and I'm happy to even do a podcast about this, but even some of the greatest movies of all time, we know get sequels. Because there's unfinished business. We all, even though we felt this way, the way that we explained it, the way that we felt moving away from the first Rocky, we also felt that there were unanswered questions and unfinished business. So we got Rocky 2. The movie came out 2 years later, but it pretty much takes up immediately after that fight is over. They're getting wheeled to the hospital. Both beat the fuck out of. And when they started it like that, we're also used to, at that point in our lives, maybe now they start off like, you watch Avengers Endgame and then it's the finger snap and it says 5 years later, or you watch a Star Wars movie and it seemingly takes over immediately after the last one ended. But they didn't have sequels back then that started the second, especially blockbuster movies like that. So they literally started right after they beat the living crap out of each other, and they're both on their way to the hospital. And they had that moment where with the wheelchair, Rocky rolls up to fucking Apollo in the wheelchair, and he has that moment and even though they were just their enemies for competitive, competition's sake, they were like they understood each other, like, that they were both like victims of a war. Which is
Yes, a mutual respect.
like. Exactly.
Yeah,
which you didn't think Apollo could have in the first movie because Rocky was a chump, where you assume he thought he was, but he gained his respect. He obviously did. And even going into the next fight, which you're not going to have a sequel to Rocky without him rematching fucking Apollo Creed, but there's a long, hard road even moving up to that. Going up to Rocky 2 after, he fucking gets paid. Rocky gets paid. He gets out of the hospital. Him and Adrian are living on Easy Street seemingly for a little while. He proposes marriage to her. He takes it to the fucking zoo. Take it to the zoo, Rock. Take it to the fucking zoo.
How can you not forget that fucking romantic moment? I would hope you wouldn't mind marrying me too much.
I hope you wouldn't mind marrying me too much. In front of the Tigers. And he goes, he spends all that money. He buys that ridiculous fucking coat with the tiger on the back. It's so tacky.
Yeah.
Late 1970s.
A car he can't drive because it's fucking stick.
He doesn't know how to drive that. And why the fuck are you buying a Thunderbird? What's wrong with you? He doesn't even know. I don't even think he knows how to drive. I don't even think he knew how to fucking drive.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he
Yeah,
did.
he was spending money recklessly after that initial payment, buying them Rolexes.
And the house, and then he buys the house. You know what I mean? He gets married to Adrian.
The
You
house,
know,
at least I'll say the house. At least Adrian was there to kind of make sure he wouldn't get fucked over.
right?
You
Yeah,
know? Because he was ready to
Yeah.
buy it right away. She was the one asking questions, and
yeah.
She asked all the questions. He was ready to buy it. She didn't even know what the fucking plumbing problems were. Rocky was ready to buy that house with a fucking dead body buried in the basement. He was ready to buy that house. He didn't give a fuck what was wrong with it. The shingles could have been falling off, but he didn't give a shit. He was just ready to buy that fucking house because it's like, you know what it is? It is that he was really trying to grasp that story because he went through that. He was a poor actor who had no fucking money. So what he does is that he wrote down what he went and did after he got that Lords of Flatbush money, after he got that porno movie money, after he got that Rocky money. He was like, well, if I'm going to write this story, let me write the story on how I got paid after Hollywood. And this is how I did my stupid shit. And he was like, well, you do this. It's like one of those rites of passage when you hit the lotto kind of, you know, but he goes and we watch him stupidly spend this money. And even as a kid, you know, like, I'm like, what is he doing? Why? Like, save your money. And I'm like this frugal little shit who's like, why are you buying the Thunderbird if you don't know how to drive it? I asked my mom. I turned around to my mom, I'm like, Mommy, why is he buying a car he doesn't know how to drive? You know, like, it just makes sense to me. But Rocky 2 is a really good sequel, and it did take over from the first movie. And pretty much when it all starts, you know, they're all married and stuff like that. The ball doesn't start getting rolling. Adrian's pregnant, and then fucking Apollo Creed calls him out. After saying that he's not going to fucking fight him ever again, he calls him out. And that starts the controversy between him and his wife. Like, oh, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to fight? No, I'm not going to fight. But what are you going to do? You got to pay for all this shit. He's trying to figure out, I'm going to go back to the meat plant, maybe work with Paulie. You know, and then he gets fucking laid off, which is, I didn't know what a layoff was until Rocky got laid off. I had no fucking idea what that was. I didn't know what that was. I'm like, what? They could just tell him to go home? And, you know, like, shit starts going downhill again because the mighty, you know, like, as they rise, sometimes they'll fall just as hard. And he, even though everybody in Philly loved him, he had to make a fucking decision. I mean, you guys, I'm pretty sure, like Phil, you were on board with him fighting Apollo Creed. You didn't see it the way Adrian did, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, but you could appreciate it watching it because obviously she loved him, and you know the fact that they told him like, you know, the next shot you take might be your last, and obviously it wasn't because he went on to fight for like another fucking 20 years or whatever. At the time, they were basically saying, you know, you're in danger of going blind if you keep fighting. So
Yeah, because he had that bad eye, right? After he got his
yeah,
eye busted. Were
he had
you
the
on
bad
board
eye.
with that? Were you on board with that game? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, the bad eye? What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I was just gonna keep it short. Yeah, like exactly. She was trying to advise him to stick to the doctor's word, but obviously, once he got laid off, he was out of options, and the only thing else he knows how to do is fight. So the fact that, but it was kind of cool at that moment because, you know, obviously what happened. You know, when she started to have the miscarriage, and she gave him the infamous win speech. You know, like, but up until that moment, you hated her because you're like, let him go fight. Like he doesn't know, he doesn't have anything else. Like he needs to make money. He doesn't want to be like a fucking bum, and he doesn't want to go be a loan shark again. And then obviously with
Being a bum, fear of being a
yeah,
bum. Yeah, everybody has the fear of being a bum. Like, what about you, Gabe? I mean, were you on board with Adrian? Like, as an adult and as a kid? As a kid, you're probably cheering Rocky
as a
on.
kid, I wanted him to fight him. I didn't really fully understand why she was so hesitant to wanting him to fight. As an adult, obviously knowing that he has the bad eye and that he can get like, you know, he can have a permanent, he can be blinded permanently. I understand somewhat of her, you know, her side of the story too. As far as him though, I feel like he was on his last legs because he tried to go back to the he got laid off from the meat factory. Gazzo was offering him work doing the collections again, and he obviously didn't want to put himself in a situation where he could get arrested and things like that. So I feel like he basically, you know, his back was against the wall. He needed to do
Had no
something.
choice. He had no
Yeah,
choice. Yeah.
like he said, you can't stop me from being a man. I got to provide. That's what he
That's
wanted
what
to do.
got me. And to be quite honest with you, and I hope my wife isn't listening, I was never on his side. I was never on Adrian's side. I got a bad eye. I'm fighting the guy. I don't give a fuck, man. I'm fighting with
yeah.
one arm out of the grave. I don't give a shit.
Well, yeah, that's why
Creed again.
the best line he gives her in that when he's like, I never asked you to stop being a woman. Like, don't ask me to stop. And it's like, it's the perfect line because it's like he's not being aggressive, he's not being a dick. He's just being like, hey, listen, I tried to do it your way, but your way isn't working. The only other way I know is to fight, and let me fucking fight.
Exactly. He
Hell
just
yeah.
wanted to put food on the table, especially, and didn't want the kid to grow up, having bad stuff or a hard time. He wanted the kid to have things he didn't have.
Yeah.
So he was willing to put his eye, he was willing to risk his eyesight for that and for the other rematch, for the.
Listen, in real life, this is a real life story, and this is part of like a real life decision that boxers and fighters have to make. That Michael Bisping has a fake eye. He's a commentator for UFC, and he beat GSP in the Garden 2 years ago. I was there. I know. It was awesome.
GSP beat him.
GSP beat him. I'm sorry, GSP beat him. Sorry, GSP beat him. It was an awesome moment, and he was, holding the belt. He beat Luke Rockhold, but he had lost his eyesight before the Rockhold, and he didn't even tell UFC because he was afraid of that happening too. The meal ticket. You worry about these things and how well off your family is going to be in real life. Rocky could have been like, "Hey, Adrian, if I don't fight, you got nothing. If I fight, at least you got something. You may not got me 100%, but you got something, and our kid has something." Yeah. So the kid, see, that was the thing. The kid, now she has that near miscarriage, right? She ends up going into intensive care. She goes into a coma. The baby's born. Question marks about her. You don't know if Adrian's going to kick the bucket or not. You're sitting on the edge of your seat trying to find out. But I'm going to take my best line of the movie early and say that, and it's also the best part of the Rocky soundtrack, beginning to end. The best fucking track out of all of the Rocky soundtracks is right when they're in the hospital and she starts to come out and he asks her, he's like, "I'll do whatever you want. I'll do whatever you tell me." And she just whispers, "Win," like you said, Phil. And she goes, "Win." And then you hear the bell, ding, da 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 da, and then you hear Mick goes, "Well, what are we waiting for?" And then that's my favorite line of the whole movie because I get amped every time I fucking hear that. I'm like, I'm gonna get out of my seat. I'm gonna get out of my seat right now. I'm gonna stand up and do this fucking podcast standing up because I'm so fucking hyped that Mick was like, "What are we waiting for? What am I waiting for? I need to go out and win. I need to." Every time I fucking see that movie, that's
whenever I see that scene or whenever she says that, I always go, "Yes, let's go."
Yep.
Like you get so pumped every time and into it. Yeah, like let's go, let's get to work.
On board with Mick the whole way, man, because Mick is etching to go. And you're also feeling for Rock and Adrian, but you're feeling for Mick because Mick is like, "Hey, listen, remember that last shot that I told you about a year and a half ago, Rock? Like, you got a kid now. It's been a year. You took that beating a year ago. Let's get to fight camp. Shoot."
Can I acknowledge one thing about when he's I want to acknowledge something about when he's training for Apollo before she gives him her consent.
Yes.
How Mickey is just ripping into him. Like, you're training like a goddamn bum, huh?
You're running off the beach.
Huh?
Have you discussed the beach scene though?
No, I didn't take the beach. We're not up to 3 yet. Sorry. But yeah, he's just like abusing.
She's getting excited too. She's getting excited too. But he's whipping him, Gabe. He's fucking.
And he's like, "What's your problem, Mick?"
Yeah.
What do you mean, what's my problem? What's your problem? He's like, a bum. You're treated like a goddamn bum.
I understand as a kid, guys, that he was trying to work on his soft points, right? He was trying to work on his soft points. I knew that he had he was lacking in that speed, like Apollo.
Women weakened legs.
Women weakened legs, Rock. Well, this is the infamous line too. Another infamous line too that I want to say is that when he's making him chase the chicken, and he goes, "I want you to eat lightning and crack thunder."
I feel like
I still say that to
an idiot.
I feel like a fat idiot, man. What am I doing here? I'm chasing this chicken.
I like how he put
great scene. Oh yeah,
he's my lucky sweatshirt. He puts his hand. He puts
holes
his hand in the hole.
You got a hole in it. And well, the thing is, after she shows him the win, and then they have the real montage. The real montage with all the kids. All the kids are chasing him in the streets. Yeah. He's rolling deep to that fucking museum, and that's when he catches the chicken. He actually catches the chicken. He fucking does all the shit that Mick's making him do. He's getting faster. He's fighting with his right hand. He's fighting standard and not southpaw because he's teaching him you got to use your right hand. And he's making him do that. He does it. And Rocky becomes proficient with his right. He's not only just a southpaw, he's a switch stance fighter. He catches the fucking chicken, which is, I was super pumped for it because that old fucking chicken got me fucked up. I'm like, I was like, speed, greasy, fast lightning. So
there was one cool quote also from Duke, and I know Gabe will remember this. Remember Apollo's trying to get the rematch going, whatever, and like Duke wants no part of it, and then Apollo's like, "What are you scared of?" And then when Duke gives him that speech, was like, "I seen you beat him, like you beat no man before," and he's like, "And
no man before
coming." Like
he has
you got so hyped for Rocky, you're like, "Yeah, let's go!" Like Rocky took everything you got. And he just kept coming.
It's all wrong for us, baby.
Exactly. Yeah. Like obviously, Mickey's win is like the number one, but Duke's that speech that Duke gave is number two because I was sold on that rematch when Duke was saying like he's all wrong for us, baby.
Yeah,
like
let it go.
Because even like, and then you could see the look in Creed's eyes too, like fighters always say this, like you could look in a man's eyes. And you like could see respect or fear. And like when Duke said that, and coming from Duke, because obviously Duke trained him and he respects Duke. And when Duke said that shit, like Creed's face changed. It went from like, shit, do I really want this? Like, should I really go
for a second? He got scared for a second. Yeah, he really started second guessing him.
I think his stubbornness solidified that. Yeah, I'm fighting this motherfucker again.
Yeah, that's why
he wanted that win.
Yeah, and that's what made the movie great because then you also respected Creed because he looked at Duke and was like, "Yeah, I don't care if this motherfucker's going to take me to the darkness again. I want to go again."
It's the competitive spirit. It's the competitive spirit that lies within everybody, and this is a reoccurring thing. Even Duke comes up later. And I want to say in Balboa and gives one of those motivational speeches again. He digs deep and they give him that fucking, and we'll talk about that when we get to Balboa. But Rocky 2, the montage, we get to the arena again. It's the next the next fight. The crowd is on the edge of their seats. Everybody's cheering Rocky as he walks in this time. He's not an unknown. Everybody knows who the fuck this guy is. And he brings it to him. And then the way that it goes with the exchange, it's just as epic as the first one, which is pretty much carbon copy, let's be honest. And this isn't a diss to it because what is a fight? A fight against two of the same people might end up playing out the same way both times with two different outcomes even. You'll get guys who will fight each other the same fight. One guy will win, the other guy will win, one fight to the next. So they could change even still, depending on, the judges, the score, and all that stuff in real life. So these guys are bringing it to each other. Pretty much same scenario. They both knock each other down. Now, I've watched this happen in real life. I watched Matt Mitrione and Fedor Emelianenko punch each other at the same time, both knock each other back. Now, these fat fucks both hit each other so hard, you heard there was no mic underneath the cage, but it sounded like a mic ring in wrestling when somebody slams to the ground. I've never heard a bang that loud in my life at an MMA event. These two big motherfuckers. Now, you remember Matt Mitrione. He was a New York Giant. Big guy. Dude, guy's fucking huge. And Fedor, arguably one of the greatest heavyweights who ever lived in MMA altogether. And they both punched each other with full strength. Fedor being the one who was knocked unconscious. And Matt Mitrione got up and jumped on top of him and just pummeled him. But they both knocked each other out, which could have been hard enough for it to be like a Rocky situation. So two people punching each other at the same time is plausible. Now, I've heard the reason why I'm bringing this up is I've heard a lot of people saying it's bullshit. Shut the fuck up. It's not bullshit. If you both take a turn at the same time, you both knock each other on the chin, you could easily knock each other out. There's YouTube videos of it. Google it. So this is how it ends. So this is how it ends. And it's Rocky's on the clock trying to get up after that fucking count.
Can I acknowledge one thing before the end?
Before he gets up, sure, go for it.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring up a section of the fight. The end of round 2 of the second fight. Like Apollo's basically just threw everything he had at him for the first 2 rounds. And then at the end of the bell, you could see he hits him with like an overhand left or right. And then he also kind of biffs him, smacks him in the back of the head. You could see that that's the beginning of the crack in the armor of Apollo believing in himself.
Yeah.
I just threw everything
Or
at
when
him.
Rocky, like when
I
Rocky
trained
told,
hard for this fight. I didn't take him like a joke like I did the first fight, and he's still fucking standing in front of me.
And it happened again. And it happened again. Which could very well happen that way. You know, you get guys like, you get guys that go and fight other people twice. Like even you could say Tyson and Holyfield, and Tyson, like you would think like he had problems with Holyfield the first time. The second time he didn't have. He saw when that moment happened is when he bit him on the ear. He couldn't take the headbutts or whatever. What happened in the clinch? He lost it, and that's when he really lost the fight. Was the moment before he bit his ear, and it was like, that moment in the movie. And these things that do happen in the dramatics of a fight, they don't happen as articulated as they do,
Yep. Well, even going back to the Last Dance documentary, when they said when Rodman pushed Pippen, and Pippen got up and was like, "Whatever," he's like, "We knew it was over." Like the fact that we couldn't get in your head anymore, and that you're gonna just beat on us. We don't have anything else. And that was at that moment where it was like where Apollo was like, "All right." And I think he said in the pre-fight interviews he was going to put him away in like 2 rounds, and then when he put that barrage, and those were arguably MMA terms, 10-7 rounds. Like he dominated those 2 rounds, and then all of a sudden Rocky's like, I ain't going down no more, and then he's still coming out the same way he did in the first round. Apollo must be like, what the fuck, man? Like, go home, bro.
Well, you're not going to have a sequel. You're not going to have a sequel without him fucking winning. So obviously he fucking wins. Rocky's fucking champ. Adrian comes rushing in again like she did in the first one, but it's over. Apollo earns his complete respect, and I mean, Rocky earns Apollo's complete respect, and vice versa. And it's the epic ending that you wanted from the first movie, and they give it to you in the second one. And
now,
then
quick question.
Yeah, shoot.
Quick question. Before, like, if they would have skipped the Tommy Morrison one, and the Mr. T one would have been 4, and the Drago one would have been 5, and Rocky 3 would have been the trilogy. Would that have worked out better? You think? If they just would have went that route?
What? I'll tell you what. In real life, trilogy's happening. In real life, trilogy's happening. You're definitely gonna see that fucking fight for a third time, no doubt about it. Because you had Ali Frazier 3 times. You know what I mean? You have these major trilogy fights that, without question, you're not sure because they go one way and then they go another way. It's rock, paper, scissors at this point. It's best of 3. You got to see who comes out of this on top. You need a decisive match. And fans, for the most part, whether it's fucking fantasy movies or real life, they get very, 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 very irate when they don't get what they want. And the fans want a trilogy fight. In the movies, listen, you're not going to have it be called the Rocky movies if he's not winning the third time. Even if you go like and spin a curveball and it's a draw. Oh, Rocky still holds the belt. You're gypped. If Apollo wins, there's no more series. You do not get Drago. You do not get Clubber Lang. We don't know a world. Listen, if that happens, we don't know a world with Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, which is a great segue for this next one. A couple years later, Rocky is champ. He's on top of the fucking world. And then this guy who's also on his, rise to the top is concurrently on that same rise as Rocky's on his plateau. And this other guy, Clubber Lang, is on his rise to the top. You start the movie, Rocky's fucking on the top of the world. He's loaded, fighting all these guys one after another, beating this guy. And then there's speculation comes up a little later that, hey, all these fights were set up so you could keep your belt. And he's got a little bit of fucking beef with Mick over it. Paulie knows it. Adrian knows it. They're all pushing him to retire. Mick wants to retire. This guy wants to keep going. They have that awesome scene at the beginning of Rocky 3 where he's got the statue ceremony and Clubber Lang comes out and he outright fucking bitches him out. And he goes, yo, I'm going to fuck your wife. He does, I'm Tyrone. I'm going to fuck your wife. He did that. You know Tyrone? You guys have seen Tyrone, right? He's all over you.
Yeah, from Chappelle's Show. Yeah.
You ever see the Tyrone videos?
Hey, boy.
No. Yeah, hey, woman. He goes, hey, woman.
Bring your pretty little self over to my
What
house.
a real man. Come
I'll
here,
show you what a real
man.
man is.
What a real man is. He points down to his dick. He's like, hey, I'm going to fuck your wife, Rocky. And Rocky's like, hey, you can't fucking do that. You're in Philadelphia. There's no Guidos left. I'm the only one, but who gives a shit? I'll fuck you up right now. So that started the beef between these two guys in the movie. And you're like, yo, this guy looks dangerous because you're watching Clubber Lang in those montage clips because they start the movie with the montage because they know how powerful a montage be. And they start Rocky 3 with the montage and give it to the fans right away, but they give the Clubber Lang montage at the same time and him rising to the top. The next guy for Clubber Lang to fight is Rocky. Rocky's ducking and dodging him. As they said, they're giving him these chump opponents. What happens? Clubber Lang brings it to him, goes to the ceremony, calls him out. And I was like, oh, shit. I couldn't believe it, you know? I see Rocky 3 pretty much shortly after I seen the first two, and very shortly afterwards because it was probably a quick rent. I went to go rent that fucking movie. Might have been just when Blockbuster was coming out. And went to go rent Rocky 3, which I knew the soundtrack before I knew the movie, and you all know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'll get to that in a little bit. But he calls him out, and then it's like Rocky's got to fight this guy. Rocky's got to fight this guy. And Mick is like, hey, Rock, I'm old. I don't know if I could do it. Maybe let's just call it quits. Let's all call it quits and just give up the belt. He'll take it, interim, whatever, you know? Rocky's like too proud. And that's another thing that this series of stories has taught us, that sometimes pride gets the best of you. Even though there was some presence of it in the first two, this is when karma was going to come back and pride was going to cash in on that check that you wrote 2 movies ago. And Clubber Lang beats his ass. Right? Doesn't he knock him silly? That's when the CTE starts. Like he starts getting the ringing and the fucking dizziness. Yeah. When you guys saw Rocky lose, how did that fuck you up, Phil? When you saw him,
yeah, it definitely fucked me up because it was like, at that point you thought like, Rocky was untouchable, but I did take it with a grain of salt that like he just watched Mickey die and like he had like an adrenaline dump, like they say in MMA, but like it definitely fucked me up, like the fact that he lost the title and you found out Mickey died, relatively shortly after. So it was definitely one of those like where it's like, is he going to come back from this? Like, what's going to happen? And it was kind of also ending on that sour note with Mickey, like him trying to protect him, quote unquote, but at the same time, Rocky as a man being like, is this title like real? Like, I've been fighting these guys that, I should be beating as opposed to like the real contenders. So it was definitely that that moment in the movie where that you hit that crossroads where it's like, oh shit, is he going to go back to being, that loan shark and loses it all, or is he going to, come back and beat this guy in a rematch?
I mean, Gabe, I know I was like, you used to watching like He-Man and G.I. Joe at this point, and G.I. Joe and He-Man never lose, but Rocky just lost to Clubber Lang. How did that fuck you up? Because it had to have fucked you up. Didn't make you feel good. How did that fuck you up as a kid?
I was definitely disappointed. It was sad. I didn't expect it to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen to him that in that type of devastating fashion of him getting knocked out. That like it was a second round knockout.
Yeah, it was
or something like that. Yeah. So it was definitely sad when I was watching it. But obviously as an adult, you realize that, like you said, he bit off a little more than he could chew. He pretty much plateaued as like a fighter at that point. He didn't have like that extra edge of like the Apollo training him or whatever. Like at that point, so I feel like he kind of plateaued and he was complacent because he had all the money and things like that. But him getting his ass handed to him was definitely a harsh reality check.
And Mick dying, dude, that fucked me up, man, because like at that point, like I knew of like, maybe Bambi's mom dying. You had, what did you have? You had like, like Yoda and Obi-Wan disappearing. You know what I mean? At that point, that's like what I knew about. Like, and it's like, oh no, Mick actually died like an old man dies. You know what I mean? And that was like my first exposure to that in any movie. It was like, pretty heavy content. Mick dies backstage while Rocky's fighting. He wasn't even ringside with them, which even fucked me up more.
Why didn't they put an oxygen thing on him right then and there? Like,
Yeah.
like you know what I mean?
Good
Why
question.
did they take him to that? Obviously, it's before the movie, but it's like, why did
Yes.
it take so goddamn
Guys, I'm
long
taking
for
a
him to get
30-second
medical
break. I'll be right
attention?
back.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the question is, Gabe. The question is now you have Mick back there, and back then I guess you could pretty much say, okay, well it's 1980 whatever, right? Like 82, I think the movie came out. So maybe they had just the paramedics were just ringside. So the paramedics are only really there for that. Maybe there's a paramedic outside. And within the commotion of what was going on with the fight, I think what they tried to convey was that there was a confusion to get him medical help. They should have had oxygen. And nowadays, if this were today, they would have had him with the machine, a defibrillator. They would have had the whole fucking gamut there to get him, resuscitated.
Yeah.
But I guess like my whole like philosophy. I mean, not philosophy. My whole reasoning with that whole situation as an adult is I just throw the time into it. Like it was, back in the day. What are you gonna do?
Do you think that if Mickey survives and Apollo offers his help, that Mickey and Apollo could have worked together?
Hell yeah, Mickey, Apollo, and who did we say? And Duke.
Yeah.
They would have. They would have. I'm telling you, like I had that thought actually. I was thinking. I was like, and this is probably years ago. If Mick did make it through, him and Duke would have been like, the best fucking boxing coaches ever. Him and Rocky. Welcome back, Phil.
Sorry, yeah, I drank 3 beers. They're running through me.
You got to do. So right now I have a catheter in. So that's how I do these podcasts. I'm hooked up to a fucking machine, and there's a toilet. There's a toilet on my fucking seat. Like you guys don't see. You see, like below like that line. You guys don't see this whole like myriad of piping that I have underneath me just to take care of my bodily fluids.
Let's on our question.
So,
Phil, do you think that
shoot.
Duke? Do you think that if Mickey doesn't die and Apollo offers his help, that Mickey and Apollo would have worked well together?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, I think that it worked out perfectly. Like, and you could see it like in a lot of MMA gyms where like guys change camps and they get a little better. Like, I feel like, at that point, like, like Mickey got as much out of Rocky as you could possibly get. And he needed like a new voice in his head. And Duke was the complete opposite of Mickey. So like, as you saw, like, when he brought him to like the hood and like he started kind of learning a different way to fight, I don't think he would have beat like Drago without like Duke, to be honest, because Duke was like a little different as far as getting through to Rocky, and he had that. And Duke also, you got to remember too, Duke was studying Rocky as an opponent. So now, as you got him as a student, he's able to give him all the knowledge, and then also he already kind of has like he already knows him as a fighter, and so it's tough to answer. I don't know. I love that he went with Duke. I mean, those speeches that Duke gave him, like that Rocky Four. I don't want to jump ahead of it, but that Rocky Four speech when Apollo died. Oh,
well, we're getting to that, but like that's going with. I honestly think like like Mick and Duke probably would have made a great duo, and they probably would have made. Like I said, like Rocky and Apollo would have been the new Avengers. That's what would have fucking happened. They would have turned into superheroes at that fucking point with that kind of stuff. But it was said that Mick died, and it really did change the course of the whole movie, and got that whole like. It was the combination of him losing, Mick dying, and Apollo offering his help. And Apollo seemingly coming out of the shadows and saying, hey, man, that wasn't you up there. That wasn't the guy that I fought. I know where that guy is, and if you want, come to LA, which, I'm game. I'm moving to California no matter – if somebody's saying, move to Cali, I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's go. Yeah. I mean, I know I made the move, and, we've all moved out of New York, all originally being from New York, us three. But we all moved out of New York and moved to different places and stuff like that. But California is the one place that and me and my wife have both said this together. We are definitely dropping everything and moving to Cali if we ever fucking hit the lotto. We're going to California. That's it. So, like,
that's a bad place to live, man.
Rocky wasn't going to say no to that shit. And Adrian was wearing those Louboutins. So she's like, I'm going to Beverly Hills, bitch. So they fucking went to go chill with Apollo Creed, but Apollo Creed doesn't bring him to the fucking Beverly Hills. He brings him to the hood where he fucking trains. You remember that shit? And they walk in to that good fucking gym with hard motherfuckers are training. He's like, no, this is where it's happening, Rock. We're training here, not in your hotels, not in your fucking big elaborate fucking gyms. We're training here, and I'm going to teach you how to be fucking hardcore. The combination of those three are what fueled Rocky. It was the death of Mick, losing to Clubber, and then having Apollo Creed grind him down again like the street urchin that he was to begin with. Rocky was going to start from the bottom. And that's where the soundtrack comes in, which don't give me any fucking bullshit that you don't like the song. Everyone in the fucking world loves Eye of the Tiger because you all get pumped every time you fucking probably the most played song in any gym ever. The riff,
any playlist I had for working out had that on it.
Got it. Same here, man. You can't live without it. You can't live without it. And same guy does the soundtrack for Rocky 4 too. But Eye of the Tiger by far is definitely recognizable, pumps everybody up. I'll even put that shit on before I do my little fucking garage workout. And it still, to this day, gets me amped. Even from when I was a kid, my fat ass thought I could run. I was like, I could run? You know, I'm here at Eye of the Tiger. I'm running on the beach. I weigh fucking 250 pounds. I'm 8 years old. And I'm like, I'm going to fucking run. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. I have a heart attack now. But anyway, so, like, getting to that, Gabe, your girl brought up the beach run. The beach run scene. They're running on the beach.
Erotic beach scene.
Yes. They're hugging and stuff, but we didn't get to that yet. We're going to start where he gets him running on the beach. And then we're going to get to, you know, they're running and he can't keep up with Apollo at first. He's having trouble fucking running on the beach.
Yeah, Apollo's smoking him.
Apollo's fucking smoking him. Yeah, he's like, you got to start running, Rock. I mean, none of this fucking Philly running up the steps shit's going to cut it on the beach here. You got to do sand running, which in real life fucking sucks. Trying to run in the sand fucking blows. Running on wet sand's a little easier, but running in dry sand is a fucking nightmare. On the calves and your quads, it fucking totally blows. But if you've ever had to run on the sand and then you see them do it in the movie, you have an appreciation for it. You're like, okay, this is not fucking easy.
Yeah, you think it's easy, and then you think you could do it until like you say, you get out there and start doing it, and then the next thing you know, you're like trying to catch your breath because you think you're dying.
Right, and they're explosive. They're two explosive guys on the fucking sand. Like, poof, like a fucking bullet. These guys are running through the sand. And then eventually, you know, like we have like the reoccurring theme. The whole movie started with the montage, Rocky 3. So Rocky 3, you know, it leads into another montage with the Eye of the Tiger. Now, honorable mention at the beginning of this, and like I said going into this, you wouldn't have a lot of things if they made a third sequel with a rematch instead of Clubber Lang. And like I said, this introduced the stardom of Mr. T, who was one of the icons of my childhood going A-Team, his fucking cereal, his cartoon. Dude, Mr. T was everywhere. I wanted to be Mr. T. Like, the thing is, and this goes to a lot, you know, like, you get a lot of people, and not to bring this racial, though, but, you know, it is sort of a little funny. I was this little white kid who wanted to be all these black athletes. Like, I wanted to be Darryl Strawberry, I wanted to be Michael Jordan, and I wanted to be Mr. T, and it still stands to today. And I'm happy to be brought up in those eras because the world had a cornucopia of people that you could use as your role model. You know what I mean? And I'm happy that I was exposed to all that, and I didn't have that closed-minded exposure that the generation before us had. And
that
Rocky
Michael Jordan commercial, I could say, I'm not going to do it on your podcast because I'm going to sound like an idiot, but I could sing that Michael Jordan commercial and be like Mike.
Hey,
it was cool.
I want to be like Mike.
Yeah, like no one thought anything of it. Yeah.
To this day, if I take a shot at a basket, I'm like, Jordan.
Yeah.
Jordan. It's like the Chappelle Show thing where he's like Kobe, but I'm like Jordan with everything because that's when that started. You know, when you have Marv Albert going, Jordan, or he's Miller, swish, you know, like, and you're hearing all this shit, all the NBA Jam, like, little fucking snippets that you would get, you know, and you'd find yourself repeating them all the time, which I thought it was bullshit, and I knew it was a whole copyright thing back in the day with NBA Jam and not having Jordan on the game and stuff. They ended up hacking it so you could get number 23 on. Do you remember it? It just said number 23.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Going back to Rocky, you're not going to have Mr. T, and you're not going to have Hulk Hogan. Thunder Lips. Thunder
ultimate
fucking the ultimate
It's the
male.
ultimate
in the
meatball.
flesh, baby.
He comes out like fucking like straight
Adam
up like
Cole.
yeah, and or one could say Ric Flair. He comes out looking like Ric Flair, or looking like classy Freddie Blassie, or like or even Jesse Ventura, who's emulating all these guys. And Hulk Hogan nailed it, and you could see that he was a fucking superstar. Even watching it now, you knew that people were going to be like, "Yo, this fucking guy is something else." And he was like, he ended up Hulkamania started because of and wrestling and exploding because of Hulkamania, because of Rocky 3. It was like a domino effect,
Yeah, the AWA
So-
still kicking themselves to this day.
They gave him up in a sense, right? Wasn't he in between regions?
Yeah, they didn't want him. They basically, Gagne didn't want him doing what's it called? Like, he didn't want to give him the belt just because he was an actor. They always wanted to keep Bockwinkel on top, so they didn't want to give him the keys until Vince Jr. came calling and Vince
Hey,
Jr.
you're gonna take out the
That was
Iron
perfect
Sheik,
for Vince
and
Vince
then
wanted
fucking
Vince wanted more mainstream, so that was perfect for Vince.
Yeah. And I mean, listen. Go Phil. Shoot.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Right. Quick side note: did you guys watch the Vice thing on Dr. Schultz?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
I have not seen it.
Very short story. Without him slapping that guy, he probably would have been the next big heel.
Yeah.
That him slapping that reporter ruined his career basically.
Wow.
Even though he's protecting the business.
Yeah. Oh, because he called him out on the whole wrestling being fake thing, right?
And
Didn't he say that?
Vince told him, don't break character. So he's like, okay, I'm going to be Doc. And then when he slapped him, and then the guy sued him, like Vince was like, I got your back. But then Vince backed away. Like it's a fucked up story.
It is fucked up.
Yeah.
Nah, there's a lot of, we could thank Vince for a lot of things, and then we could also demonize him for a lot of things too, because that's sort of scumbagish. But you could thank fucking Sylvester Stallone for putting his fucking giant in his fucking movie, and that made a whole era of pop culture. And Mr. T as well. And going into that, he's fighting this Mr. T, who's pretty much a monster. Mr. T's a monster. Everybody's scared shit of him. He was in real life. Mr. T was a bodyguard to the stars. He was really the kind of guy you don't fuck with. Like, you don't put hands on this guy. And he showed that edge in Rocky 3, destroying him and showing, and that, like when he's like, and he's like throwing the fist, and he's like, and he's doing the slow motion punching Rocky in the face. I felt every one of those hits like virtually, like even as like a 9-year-old, I'm like trying to duck and dodge. I'm like, and but like Rocky's still getting hit in the second fight. There's the rematch. There's no Mick, but he's got Apollo, and he's got like everybody on his side, and he's going at him again. And obviously, this is a Rocky movie. You know how this fucking ends. He fucking wins. He beats Clubber Lang, as Rocky does. And, he's redeemed again, which is like sort of a recurring theme, is that, every movie is like a redemption thing. He loses, he redeems himself. Now, in the whole movie, what are your favorite lines? Or what is your favorite line in the whole movie, Gabe?
From 3?
From 3.
I mean, it's hard to say, but probably. I mean, honestly, it's probably when he's about to fight Clubber for the first time, and Apollo goes into the ring to try to shake his hand, and then Mr. T smacks his hand away, like, "Get out my face!
Oh, yeah.
Get out my face!
You're next, boy."
Come on, please. Come on. So I liked how brash he was. So like I always
it was real. It seemed real.
I found his trash talking character hilarious. Like him hitting on Rocky's wife, the trash talking, all that shit. I thought he was like a perfect villain, and he played it perfect. Obviously, and he looked menacing too.
Yeah. It's crazy how like a hero, like he's a hero archetype, Mr. T, but he played such a great villain in his first role. What about you, Phil? Like, what was your favorite line, little snippet out of the movie?
Mine was probably on like a lighter note, like a funnier note, when like Creed's trying to get Rocky to start training, and like he's just not into it, and like they're running on the beach, and like Creed just smokes him and like runs by him, and he just runs back, or he looks back and just yells, "What's the matter with you?" Like just trying to like get in his mind.
Yeah.
Like you could see Rocky's just not there mentally. Like he's using the crutch of like Mickey was the only guy to train him. Blah blah blah.
He's shaming
like,
him. Like shaming.
Yeah, like
Rocky.
Creed's just shaming him at that point, and then like I don't know if it was like shortly after that where he finally started kind of getting on board with like changing his style a little bit.
Yeah.
But that was the one thing that was really cool about the movie was that Rocky adapted. Like he learned to use his footwork.
Adrian. It's always after Adrian, because remember Adrian then talks to him and tells him
you can't win.
Yeah, that fear
you
is
can't win.
That, he should like, overtake him.
Yeah.
So every time she gives him that little bit of reassurance, he gets that motivation, and boom, he trains his ass off.
And then also everybody else's motivation too. But one of the best things that could have ever fucking motivated him was, and my favorite line out of the whole movie is when the reporter goes to Clubber Lang and says, "What's your prediction?" And he goes, "Pain." And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like not until I seen guys like I guess like the Undertaker or Mike Tyson or fucking Brock Lesnar, like real badass guys. Even though kayfabe or whatever, the Undertaker was scary. Mike Tyson was a real life scary guy, and Brock Lesnar is proven to be a real life scary guy, even though he got his ass whooped by Cain Velasquez. And I'm just saying, you still get like these people in real life that are like, oh my god, don't sneeze on this guy's fucking breakfast because he will make sure he stomps your nuts to the point where there's no remnants of your gene pool ever. He'll stomp your nuts so hard, every male in your family goes sterile. Like, that's how fucking bad he's going to beat your ass. And I got that feeling from Clubber Lang. But Rocky beat the crap out of him, and he's champ again. And that's how we're ending it. But it's ending it going in to his secret fight. Apollo gets his number 3.
Yeah.
This is for you. The third fight. You get that third fight in the third movie, but you don't get to see the outcome of it, and you don't find out what happens until Creed 1.
Exactly.
You don't find out what happens till Creed 1.
Finally was so glorious because for those nut jobs like us that were waiting to find out the result of that fight, we had to wait a long fucking time.
You gotta wait. You gotta wait a whole. Well, I guess it's 1, 2. You get 3, 4 fucking movies before you even get an answer.
Yeah, and I was like, it was such a cliffhanger because especially the way it ended with them both like you could see they were both gonna crack each other. It was like, who got the better of that? Who won?
Yeah.
They just froze like this, and then they did the sketch. I love that little sketch thing that they do afterwards when they go into the credits. Ba-dum, boom, boom, ba-dum, 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 boom. Anyway, so the next movie's iconic because it's 1980s iconic, and it screams capitalism against communism, and that's fucking Rocky IV. Rocky IV, I'm like, you know what? Like, this is the one movie out of all of them that I'm probably the most excited to talk about because it's the one Rocky movie, even though I've seen all of these things a million times, I rewatched Rocky IV habitually. There was like a block of 2 or 3 years where every other movie that was put in the VHS player was Rocky IV.
Mm-hmm. Best soundtrack of any movie.
Yeah, best soundtrack ever.
Ever.
The best soundtrack ever.
We're going to go into the sad montage, but let's not get to that yet because the sad montage is right when that soundtrack talks, and I have a great appreciation for the soundtrack too. So in Rocky IV, you're super loaded. Rocky lives in LA now with Apollo Creed. They both have mansions. Paulie has a fucking robot. Okay? Paulie's got a robot. In 1984, right? Or 85, let's just say it's 84, 85. Nobody's got a robot now. I have a Roomba, and I have an R2-D2 toy. That's as close as I'm getting. Cool. I mean, I got the smartphone and stuff, and we got these things, right? And we got like our computers. And yeah, that's comparable. It might even be better as far as performance goes. But Paulie had a robot who brought him breakfast and presumably gave him hand jobs. Because they gave you an adult joke. I don't know if you guys caught it, but they're like, what else do you do with the robot, Paulie? Like, they're all asking him if he's banging the fucking robot pretty much at breakfast table. the kid asks him, he's like, hey, so what happened? You know, he walks in, he's like, I got into a fight with a friend. He's like, well, who won? You know, he's asking him. And that's what starts that question that we don't find the answer until Rocky, until Creed won. You know, his son asked him, he's like, yeah, where'd you get the Shiner? He comes in, walks into the house after he has that fisticuffs with Apollo. A friend gave it to me. So the movie starts off pretty, you know, like chill. Rocky's like, you know, on top of the world again, like he was in Rocky 3, except now there's the threat of communism, which they're going to bring in the form of an athlete, because really the only way you could explain these things, they already did the Red Dawn movie, and you had this stuff all over the news with Reagan at the time and the nuclear arms race. So it's like, how do we apply this to Rocky? And obviously, you know, sports. And boxing being huge in the Olympics and worldwide, some of the greatest boxers in the world come from Russia and former Soviet countries, and arguably some of the best fighters in the world come from these parts of the world. And it was still true back in the 80s, and they were showing this, you know, in, you know, a little bit of a campy, you know, Rocky kind of story. And he challenges Apollo Creed, which Apollo Creed we all knew was that Muhammad Ali type. He was the guy that if you're going to go make a name of yourself, sometimes if you're trying to move up in the ranks in MMA or in boxing, you know, once you get a couple of fights under your belt and you start looking dangerous and you're undefeated, go and take a name out, because then they'll give you contention, or then they'll give you a shot to fight somebody who's in contention, to give you a spot in contention. So these things happen in real life. And you get this, you know, you get this guy who's essentially a fucking Russian monster, right? Played by Dolph Lundgren, who is, I think he's a Mensa genius, right? Isn't he a genius? He's like a scientific genius or something.
Yeah.
He's got a doctorate and a PhD in chemistry. He's written books. The guy's a fucking legit genius. You know, he's not just all fucking muscle bound and stuff. The guy's got credentials. He's you know, in real life, is a serious genius. And then you have his wife, who was Brigitte Nielsen, who ended up marrying Rocky. She was married to Sylvester Stallone for a little while. And you know, they're the power couple, and they have their representative go and bring them. They're supposed to fight Apollo Creed. That's going to be the big fight. Everybody's going to be watching this motherfucker on pay-per-view. And Rocky's in his corner, and he's pretty much duking Rocky or fucking training this guy. They're like, yo, don't fight this dude. He's a machine. You don't need to come out of retirement for this guy. Which obviously would have been the right decision, because we all know the outcome of this. Apollo Creed ends up becoming Rocky's one of his best friends. That's his Mick. He ends up becoming his Mick, his right-hand man, his best friend, and he ends up dying. So Rocky suffers two tragedies, one movie after the next, which in a way sort of becomes like a reoccurring theme with these movies. You know, like that Rocky, through adversity and his tragedy, he ends up persevering through it. So his best friend gets killed in the ring. Which happens. We know this. There was a boxer last year who died. You know, we know CTE as being a serious problem. But Apollo Creed dies, and he was our bad guy at the beginning. We thought he was the fucking bad guy. We all grew to love him because he helped Rocky in the third one. And then Drago kills him. Gabe, how did that make you feel when you because it shocked the shit out of me. How did it make you feel when Drago killed Apollo Creed in Rocky 4?
As a child, it was devastating. Obviously, I was really sad. I didn't like seeing him die, and I didn't like obviously him dying in Rocky's arms. Apollo being Drago being as cold as he was, but if he dies, he dies. Obviously, makes you hate him that much more. And the stare down that he has with Rocky. So yeah, that definitely hurt me as a kid.
Yeah. So what about you, Phil? I mean, Phil, you know, like I said, we were both fucking devastated. We were devastated. Man. Let's hear Gabe. See, you were devastated again, so I can hear Nicole laugh in the background.
I was devastated when he died. Oh, Nicole, they heard you laughing.
So how did you feel, Phil? Like, you know, obviously it's not a laughing matter. We're trying not to laugh that Apollo Creed was murdered in the ring.
I know. She finds it funny that Apollo Creed got murdered.
I think it's funny that you said that you were devastated
as a child. I was. As a friend.
Best friend.
I was devastated too, man. It was like, you thought like, all right, he'll, the worst case scenario, he'll lose. You don't think like he'll die in the ring. So it's like, and then like, of course, like you said, it seems like the trend is for Rocky to overcome tragedy in every fucking movie. And it's like he has that moment where it was like, even though Apollo said, let me go out on my shield, Rocky had a moment to stop it. And then, Apollo could have walked away and then maybe would have been okay. But Rocky held that towel because Apollo told him, like, hey, let me go out on my shield. And because of that.
I'm sorry to cut you off. The referee should have stopped that fight.
Well, that too, yeah.
I mean, Drago fucking.
Bad ref. Shame on you,
that Mario
ref.
Yakasami?
That was Mario. Yeah. What is he doing? He does
the hard thing. Yeah.
Hard thing.
Yeah. Drago.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you're right. Rocky should have never had to make that decision. The ref should have fucking done his job.
With the towel, the ref should have done his job, bro. He was knocked out standing up.
Shit out of him. And then Drago continues to pummel him another 5 times.
Knocked out standing up. He was knocked out standing up, and they tried to make that look real. Like they made him look beat up. I was like, no, Carl Weathers, no.
Well, yeah, like I mean, realistically, if that was a exhibition fight, that's just over after the first. They're pulling Apollo to the side, like, yo, this is over. You're getting fucked up. This fight's
over.
The referee was slacking.
Fucked up.
I'm making the ref take a fucking piss test after that fight. That's what's happening. I'm like, all right, we're gonna see what the fuck was really going down and what the hell you were drinking or smoking. But that was really sad moment, and it obviously leads to the fireball that builds up in intensity throughout the rest of the movie. And he's got to fucking avenge his. There's no easy way out.
Was that the first song after that scene?
What?
Was that the first song?
No. He comes home first.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you can't win first.
Adrian.
Yes.
You can't win. That's the you can't win. And he goes and Adrian's on the steps, and he gets in a Lambo. And then he gets in a Lamborghini and goes fucking driving. Remember?
Yep.
Just a little side note that they didn't have in Rocky IV that they had in the other movies. Well, I don't know if you remember, but there was the priest. You remember? Hey, Father, throw me a prayer.
Carmine.
Yeah, Father Carmine. Hey, Father Carmine. I totally forgot to bring that up before, and I was like, I had it written down. I totally skipped over it, and I was like, at any moment that Rocky could have driven the Father Carmine, he couldn't because he was in L.A. at that point. I wanted him to drive the Lambo up to Father Carmine and be like, "Hey, Father Carmine, throw me a prayer." He's like, "In nomine Patri, Filii, et Spiritus Sancti," and like fucking kiss to God.
I love it when he does that.
Yeah, I love it. It makes me feel good inside, But like he could have used them at that moment, and that's the montage. They show the montage, flashback montage, which was extra touching with that song. There's no easy way out. Fucking love that shit.
There's no shortcut home.
Yeah, man. And it's just going on with the soundtrack and how 80s it was. Like everything about the movie was 80s. Even Drago's haircut, Brigitte Nielsen's matching haircut.
I was gonna say they both
mentioned that
same fucking haircut.
I think Rocky had the same haircut as Brigitte Nielsen, except she was blonde and he was brunette. Like I'm pretty sure they were going. He was definitely banging her after she did Red Sonja, and he was like, hey, you would look a lot better if you had blonde and short hair, and he's like fucking banging her. He's like, yeah, but if you had Drago's haircut, I think I'd get a little turned on. So
I climb a ladder for that one. He's like 5'7", right?
Yeah, well, no. Rocky was built.
Rocky's a short dude.
Yeah, Rocky was built at 6 foot, but Sylvester Stallone is like 5'11" or 5'10" because he's obviously in his 70s now. Osteo reasons, you shrink as you get older, and but he's diesel as fuck now. I want to look like that at 80. Not gonna lie.
Yeah,
hell yeah. But I mean. Fucking, you get Drago and her are like that power team, and they're two people. You hate them both equally because she's sort of like driving him. She's sort of like the one who's like pulling the controls, even though they got that spokesperson who speaks English at all the conferences. Drago really isn't moving forward without her. You know what I mean? And you learn that later on, actually, in the last of the Rocky movies in Creed 2. You know that was the fucking that what was going on. And that it wasn't really his desire to be a machine. He was more driven towards it because of politics and probably his relationship with her. And like we were going into the whole montage thing also, and to Russia, because that's where the next fight is. This is almost seeming like a real life Khabib Connor thing, like where they're chasing each other. It's like, no, give me a location. Give me a location. And he's like, no, you come to Russia and I fight you here, blять. And they're, like, and they got the fucking, like, okay, fine, I'll go wherever the fuck, I'll bring my American flag shorts and I'll fucking fight you there. And the montage carries on. He's training in what you think is Siberia, but in reality, everybody, if you have half a brain, Siberia is about 4,000 miles away from Moscow. So he's not training 4,000 miles away in a gulag in Siberia, lifting fucking logs up a fucking mountain on his back in 4 feet of snow, and then flying to Moscow like overnight to go and fight. No, he's probably going to fucking train out in the wilderness of Western Russia. Sorry to throw these facts at you guys.
No, you need it because the trolls will.
Everybody's like, "Yo, he was in Siberia," and it's like he was never in Siberia. He was like in the Connecticut of Moscow. Like he's just like 60 miles away, fucking in the woods. Which they had, which was crazy because I didn't realize about the whole surveillance state thing. This is something that Rocky taught me, that you could have Big Brother watching you all the time. Like they had the KGB dudes, remember?
Yeah,
they were always in the car. You remember they chased him?
Yep. He the only way he got away from them, he had to run up to the top of the fucking mountain.
Which instead of you getting that moment on the beach like you got in Rocky 3 or the moment on the steps like you got in 1 and 2, in Rocky 4 you got him climbing up that fucking mountain. Now, it was very uplifting for me, Phil. I don't know if did it strike you the same way? Like it was, for some strange reason, him climbing up the mountain was more inspiring than him climbing up the stairs. What made you feel, or how did it make you feel him training in Russia, having to go through?
Yeah, definitely the montage helped, the soundtrack helped, but also, again, going back to Duke, Duke giving him that speech about like Apollo being his son, and basically saying like you got to go out there and you got to avenge like his death, and like he's like, but basically warning him like you're gonna have to go through fucking the worst possible hell you've ever gone through in your entire life, but he's like, if there's anyone that could do it, it's you, and he's like, I know you'll be the one standing at the end, and like that just like it was such a great moment because you could see Rocky needed it because like he was questioning his confidence, like he just saw the guy that basically brought the best out in him die in the ring. So Rocky's probably thinking like, I'm going to just go out on my shield and do the same thing Creed did. But until Duke gave him that speech and basically said, it's going to be hard, but if you get through it, it's going to be worth winning. Rocky, that's what Rocky needed. And obviously we know what happened.
Yeah. What about you, Gabe? Was that inspiring, that mountain scene? Was it uplifting?
Yeah. When he conquers the mountain and how hard it is, and obviously you hear all the grunts and him like slowly getting up there and everything. So when he finally gets to the top and yells out Drago, it kind of feels like a triumph in itself, and it kind of makes it basically gets you ready for the fight itself. The thing Phil brought up about the speech, that also used to get me my goosebumps going about the whole, like he said, going through the worst nightmare that he's ever imagined, and him believing in him. So I always thought that was cool. And then, like I said, him finally conquering that fucking mountain with that music and him yelling Drago was perfect. And it was a perfect way to get you pumped up right before the actual fight.
I felt like it was, out of all the movies, probably one of the greatest leads into a fight, because that energy that went from the montage, it didn't simmer down like in the other movies. And you don't realize that the other movies simmered it down before the fight started again, because that hype was still there. Because it pretty much, as they all do, that montage led in to the Drago fight in Moscow. And it was probably one of the more exciting ones out of the whole one. I feel like they got the fight for the 1980s, got it down the best for that era. Because I even feel like the fight choreography for 4 was better than 5. Even though 5 was trying to be more realistic to the age, because that was the age of Tyson and Holyfield. That number 4 for the over the top Rocky era was the more exciting out of all of those fight scenes. The fight between him and Drago was pretty intense. And it was fucking brutal knowing that Drago, obviously looking at him, was towering over him. This guy's like a basketball player fighting a guy our height, like average height guy, you know? Which we're all 5'2", by the way, guys. Just so you all know. We're all average height. We're all like 5'2". We're all short guys. So of average height. So anyway, so you see this dude, and Rocky's gonna fight this guy, and you're thinking, I didn't even think about reach until this point. I'm like, how is he gonna fucking stretch his arm out? How is he gonna reach him as like a a young kid, as a teenager? I'm like, how the fuck is he gonna reach him? And but the fight plays out pretty plausibly, even for one of the campier movies out of the whole bunch. And it was pretty intense. Obviously, we're all Americans here. We're gonna say we're rooting for Rocky the whole way, but did you guys, now, not to take a political spin on this a little bit though, but did you guys feel a little bit extra proud to be an American during that fight? I don't want to say I had like a hatred towards communism. I didn't even know. To even go back in my footsteps to that time, I didn't even know what communism meant or what the difference was between one or the other, because I had Russian immigrant friends coming into elementary school at that time, as well as Chinese friends who both came from were formerly communist, coming into the country. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. So I just figured the people don't have anything to do with the politics. Even as a kid, I figured that out pretty early. But watching this, you see like what Drago was going through, having to look over on the side, the reaction to his camp. Like, did you guys notice that as kids? Like, that he was also somebody getting fucked over in this fight too? Gabe, did you feel like that he was getting dicked over as well? Besides, like, them trying to fuck Rocky over? Like, he was also being a pawn?
Towards the end of the fight, like, when they're criticizing him because Rocky's getting cheered, obviously you can kind of tell that they don't really care about Drago per se. They just want the victory over the U.S.
Yeah.
So I feel like Drago was getting dicked over that way. I'm sure he had a passion for fighting on his own, which is why he probably got into boxing. But it feels like at that point they've already turned on him. Like they're all ready to turn the page on him because he didn't obliterate Rocky.
Rocky right away. Yeah. They definitely bagged him. I feel like they bagged him before the fight was even over, and he probably would have had a shot to win if he had that little bit of confidence. So, Phil, I mean, aside from the American pride like that we all do have,
USA.
Did you feel like Drago was also getting, like he was getting dicked over by his fellow countrymen at that? Did you have a sympathy for him? Is sort of the question.
I kind of agree with Gabe. Like towards the like the end of the fight, I started feeling that way because, like you said, he was fucking trying his best to put away Rocky, and Rocky just wasn't going away.
As per usual.
It was like, yeah, and like for all of them to kind of turn his back on him for just trying his best, like you did feel bad for him. But up until that point, I was just it was I wasn't too patriotic about it. It was to me just a Rocky revenge against Apollo, and obviously what was cool was he wore Apollo's trunks, which kind of made it more like, like fuck you, I'm gonna beat you with his trunks on. But I towards the end of the fight, I definitely got a little bit more sympathetic towards Drago.
Well,
I also like when Rocky first cuts him.
Oh yeah.
He can bleed. He bleeds. He bleeds. We can make him bleed.
That's where I feel like Duke said what Mickey wouldn't have said. Was like he gave him that right. Was like, see, he's not a machine. He's a man. You could beat him. Like maybe Mickey would have said the same thing, but I feel like I don't know for some reason.
Duke's revelation was better. Totally, yes. Phil. I totally agree. Duke's revelation that he was vulnerable was definitely something that wouldn't have been as straightforward as Mick would have done. Mick was more like just hit him hard. He was more of like the gunpowder behind the bullet when Duke was trying to be the hollow point bullet. Like he was trying to be a different kind of bullet. Like we know what the vulnerability is. Yeah, hit the one in the middle. Oh yeah, I fucking love that. Dude, and you know what? And also notable, we do know how this fight ends because obviously it's a Rocky movie. After Rocky won, he's gonna fucking win all these fucking fights. So he beats Drago in typical Rocky fashion over the top. and wins the respect of the Russian public. Now, and going back to this and making that, we said earlier on, I guess, like we all agree, Phil, Gabe, and I agree that the soundtrack is probably overlooked and one of the better soundtracks out of all of the Rocky movies. Aside from even Eye of the Tiger and the original Conti tour. Soundtrack that was done in the original movie, Bill Conti. We got a great soundtrack in this, and no other than fucking James Brown was on this motherfucker and wrote a song for this that I play in my playlist every day. It's on. It goes on, and if I skip a million times on my Spotify, that shit better play on my playlist because I can't go a day without listening to Living in America. I fucking love that song.
Yeah,
Station to station, live in America. Live in America. Hand across the nation. Hi, live in America.
Living in America.
Got to have a celebration. Da, 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 da. Live in America. Now, that's enough for the musical portion of this segment. So, I love that fucking song, and I love this soundtrack, and the guy who wrote the rest of the soundtrack does really good work, and he's more of like an 80s metal kind of hard rock. Probably would have been Michael, like a Michael Bolton type if he kept going mainstream. But memorable fucking soundtrack, and everybody loves that whole Can't Be Russia versus America 1980s feel. And this movie went down in history as not only like a Rocky classic, but a cult classic, as just the way the movie was made.
Rocky ended the Cold War.
He ended the Cold War. I was just going to say that. Thank you, Dave. I was just going to say that. Dude, totally, in a sense, like it sort of ended that Cold War vibe. Even though the wall didn't fall until 89. In 85, we sort of started feeling like it was over because of that. But like we did in the other movies, we have a best line. And we might all agree on what the best line is, right? But Gabe, let's go with yours. What do you think is the best line in the movie?
Right before round 12, all your strength, all your power, all your love, everything you got right now. Best line.
What about you, Phil?
Gabe hit it on. Gabe stole it. That's mine too. The last round where he spits on him. He's so intense. He's like,
his spit flies out of his mouth. It goes right over. I love
everything you got.
Those unrehearsed scenes that get like the real raw emotion. But for me, the most memorable line in the movie is "I must break you." I mean, I say that before I'm about to conquer anything. This is the Drago line. I'm like,
that is good.
I look at the sandwich and I go, I must break you. And then I fucking devour the sandwich. That's it. Nothing in my path will ever not hear that line.
All of the summer. They close it all of the summer. And then
what we're going to do?
2021 May. And no one fucking told
What
me
about
that
2020, 2021? Is Nicole trying to talk to us?
No.
Oh.
No, she's on the phone. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I thought she was making fun of you. Something like, you're not going to get to leave the house until 2021. All right, so.
You need to move from this room?
No, they just heard you. They thought you were chiming something to me, but it's okay. Go ahead, talk.
He's on his podcast. He's talking about the Rocky.
So, yeah. All right. So, I mean, just sorry for the confusion, everybody. But okay. So going off to this movie ending, it ends up, like Rocky doesn't make a movie for 5 years. No Rocky movie for 5 years. Sylvester Stallone doesn't do it. And in 1990, they were like, all right, well, I guess it's due time. Fighting is hype. People were hyped for boxing in 1990. They were all on the Mike Tyson. He had his video game. He had fucking all the media hype. You had other guys coming out of retirement like George Foreman. You had, guys like Riddick Bowe like coming up in the ranks. You had not George Foreman. You had Vander Holyfield, all these huge boxers. You had this other guy named Tommy Morrison, which in my opinion, they sort of in a sense made this movie for Tommy Morrison. Like they pretty much were like, well, this guy's starting to become hot. and it's sort of hard to find white boxers who have any sort of fucking steam behind them. So we're gonna just try to fucking make this Rocky movie around this Tommy Morrison guy. Rocky 5. I mean, you all could have like a little bit of a forced, even though it has continuity in the whole canon of this Rocky saga. Rocky 5 is probably the worst out of all of them. Could we all agree? Rocky 5.
Although the Elton John "Measure of a Man" song is pretty good at the end, where it ties like all the movies together. Other than that, yeah, the movie sucked.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of did like the show at the end, but I don't like how it got like placed because I wasn't ready for it. Like, you know, obviously everybody was waiting for his come out of retirement, going to fight Tommy Morrison in a ring kind of thing. You know, because they did dance around that in future movies. They did dance around the topic of him coming out of retirement, like they did with him in Rocky Balboa.
And then I just drank
And
wine.
they did also touch on the what if in Rocky Balboa. They touched on what if he fought this guy.
I
And
haven't even been drinking much, even during this, because it's like usually.
Yeah.
is she drinking a lot? She drinking a lot?
Oh yeah,
You know what?
they can hear you too much.
Crystal clear. She sounds like she's in the podcast.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't.
No, she could be in the podcast. I'll send her the link. She could jump in.
Is it too much of a distraction? You want me to move?
Listen, I really wish I could say that I can't. I could totally do it without it. I want to say that because I don't want there to be any conflict.
Oh.
But yeah, I sort of can't. I can't even. You know, my bad.
No.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hold on a second.
I'm
Terribly sorry. Terribly sorry.
It's because you talk loud.
Gabe's in the doghouse. Woof, woof,
Woo!
woof. Gabe's in the doghouse.
My bad. My bad. My bad.
I don't care.
Gabe's getting heat. Getting that fucking heat, Gabe.
Don't worry. Paul will bark at me.
Let's talk about
Gabe,
five.
Gabe, you're about to get that. Gabe, you're about to get that X-Pac heat.
Oh, okay.
Gabe's about to get that X-Pac heat.
So. So, like, we're not going to say that Rocky V is a toss-away movie altogether, right? But, you know, it really does feel like they sort of, you know, like, form the movie around Tommy Morrison in the character of Tommy Gunn, who was pretty much living the same life that he was living in the movie as he was in real life. Apparently, the guy in real life ended up catching AIDS, the actual actor / boxer, right? And so he was sleeping around, presumably with questionable women. And that's how the movie sort of goes into. It starts with Rocky's retired and Paulie loses all the money. Bad investment, loses everything. Adrian's like, we got to move back to Philly. They sell all their fucking shit and move back to Philly and to one of those same attached houses that we all either grew up in or you know, had a friend who lived in one of these houses. We know, you know, these brick attached houses where you're all on top of each other. And he goes back to this after living in the lap of luxury for a better part of a decade or more. So, you know, you got this, the mighty have fallen situation that happens to Rocky over and over again, like it did with Clubber Lang and like it did with, you know, with him in Rocky IV when he's seen, you know, Apollo Creed get taken out. So he, in a sense, gets taken out by a bad financial decision made by Paulie. And now they're back in the streets of Philly where he's got to redeem himself again. I think right in 5 he gets the gym back, right? Does he get the gym back?
Well, he goes
Yeah,
to
because that was the other thing.
Yeah, like I
Sorry.
mean, well, that was okay. Well, probably besides the Elton John song at the end, the only good scene of that movie was he goes back to the gym where it's closed down, and he kind of has that moment where he remembers where like Mickey's kind of giving him the speech about like I'm dying, like he gives him the cufflink, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But shoot, I forgot. Yeah, Tommy. Yeah, what does happen, Gabe? Does he open the gym back up, or how does Tommy Morrison?
That was left to him from Mickey.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mickey was the one that left it to him. Everything else, they obviously got broke because of Paulie's, you know, power of attorney move.
Bad fucking idea. How do you leave that on Paul? How do you give that to what the fuck,
I have
man?
no idea how Paulie
I don't know.
had that power.
The story wouldn't be that way unless he makes that fucking giant mistake.
That's true.
So, you got this situation, and then you have the mentorship where Tommy Gunn is looking for Rocky's mentorship, which is also a reoccurring thing that ends up coming up later on, because Rocky sought mentorship in other people, and he ended up getting it from Mick, from Apollo, and from Duke. So now he's, not keen to it, doesn't want to do it, doesn't want to have anything to do with the boxing game anymore. Tommy Morrison's like, give me a shot in the most worst punch-drunk boxing acting ever. He's like, in the streets, like, give me a fucking shot, Rock. Like he can't even fucking, at least Sylvester Stallone is trying to act like he's slurring his speech. This guy, Tommy Morrison, is just a fucking punch-drunk idiot who caught AIDS. So, I know it's insensitive of me, and I'm pretty sure that if I was of any popularity, I'd catch backlash over it. But right now, under the radar, so nobody gives a shit. So
this was stuff they could bring up 5 years from now when you take off.
They'll still catch me jerking off on the screen. So, Tommy Morrison, right, fucking asking him for help and all this shit. Rocky's like, okay. Ends up becoming his mentor. This guy rises to the top, ends up becoming fucking some big shit. Now you have this Don King character who existed in real life, and actually treated the fighters that he was promoting the same exact way and exploited them. This was something that was going on back in the late 80s and early 90s as far as exploited athletes in the fight game. And they were trying to touch on that. And so Sylvester Stallone, in making all these movies, even going up to number 5, is trying to bring up these real-life scenarios, even though they may seem fictitious in the story, actually do come up in real life. People suffering from CTE, like they touch on a lot in this Rocky movie. They touch on it in the third one and in the fourth one, but they more so touch on it on the fifth one because he's not even getting hit. He's getting these flashbacks and ringing and the concussion effects and stuff like that. So they're really, in 1990, ahead of the game by bringing this up. And Sylvester Stallone knows all these things. So he knows about boxers who become trainers and who make another career in their life. Like you have your Jake LaMotta's who become a stand-up comedian after he leaves boxing. And you get these people who try to make a living afterwards. George Foreman selling grills. So he's like, most boxers get back into the fight game by training. So he started training this guy, Tommy Gunn, who ends up becoming a superstar boxer under the tutelage of Rocky Balboa. But he gets stolen by this fucking dude, which is where the boiling point is of this story, with the underlying story of his neglect to his son. His son's getting bullied, and he's not teaching his son to fight, but he's teaching this stepson or his adopted son to fight and be successful. So there's the mistake that he's making by neglecting his son, and also making the mistake by backing this guy who took advantage of him, which culminates into the end of this movie, because I don't want to spend too much time on this movie because there's a lot of parts of it that are laughable, especially the 90s nostalgia with how everybody was dressing with the one earring.
Go
for it. The fucking rat tail and the fucking punk ginger. Because even though I'm a ginger, I was bullied by punk gingers who were bigger than me. So, I sort of felt for that kid, but I was like, you're Rocky's son. Just start fucking swinging punches, man. Fuck that shit. Even my dad was a boxer. He wasn't even fucking famous. I still took swings at people. I didn't give a shit. I was like, my dad's a boxer. I didn't even know how to throw a swing. I would still throw a swing at somebody, get my ass kicked. I didn't give a shit. But you got to defend yourself. And I was always yelling at fucking Rocky's kid. I'm like, defend yourself. Stop being a fucking punk. Stop being like your mom. So anyway, it all turns to this point where this guy becomes a superstar. He fucking blows all of his money on hookers and blow and fucking fur coats and sports cars. And apparently this fucking Don King motherfucker is sucking this guy dry. And it all leads up to one point in a fucking street fight where he gets called out of a bar. I believe it's like is it New Year's or Christmas time or something? It's the winter. They're in the winter, right?
Winter time,
yeah, it's got to be Christmas or something, because I think they were talking about Christmas presents shortly before that happened.
They were all in the house unwrapping gifts. Rocky's kid had all of his friends over, right?
Yeah. Paulie was
so this fucking ends in the street fight, right? Which is probably the more redeemable parts for this movie, because you wanted to see him beat the piss out of this fucking punk kid. I've never wanted to see an old guy beat up a little kid more in my life than me when I was taking public transportation in New York. I wanted to beat the piss out of every fucking teenager on the train like they were fucking Tommy Gunn in the fucking street at the end of that fucking movie. But, he did, redeem himself by being like, hey, listen, some of us are tougher than leather, and you don't fucking just go taking swings at old men because we may know what to fucking do to your little ass. So fuck that guy, Tommy Morrison. He ends up dying of age because he fucking lived the same life that he did in that movie. This movie, as far as like one-liners go, I don't have any one-liners for this, but I do love the only thing I have that's comparable is all of the replays of what Mick was telling him in those flashbacks while he was getting hit in the head and he's seen Mick in black and white. That whole thing, that whole like internal mental montage is what I see as redeemable for my favorite line out of the whole movie. Other than, what the hell did you do, Paulie? Other than that, like, there's nothing else that I could honestly say. But Gabe, what was your favorite line of Rocky V?
I got two of them. The first one is when Tommy wins the title and he gives credit to Duke instead of Rocky. Paulie turns to him and he goes, "Let's put some glass between our teeth." Which basically means let's go get a fucking beer. So, I like that line. And I also like when
I've heard some crackheads say the same thing, Gabe. Though I don't know, man. I've heard some crackheads say the same fucking.
Well, like I know that in the movie he means beers. I hope.
That is what he means. Paulie wasn't smoking crack. He wasn't aware enough to be a crackhead. Yeah, Paulie, he was definitely
Then my second line would be when Tommy goes to call him out. When the first time Tommy calls him out. Rocky's about to walk outside. There's a couple of guys at the bar, and they turn around to Rocky, and they're like, "Hey, yo, Rock, do you need any help?" And Rocky goes, "This ain't no pie eating contest," and he walks outside. So I always thought it was funny the way he abuses the guys at the bar.
Yeah. I mean, because he's familiar. He remembers all of them from back in the day. Yeah, like what about you, Phil? What about you?
Sorry. My girlfriend's throwing food at me.
No, yeah, you see, Phil is in a pie eating contest right now. So
it's not the kind of pie that we want either. My favorite line from Rocky V was when after he punched Paulie in the face, and Rocky got in his face. He's like, "You knocked him down. Now try knocking me down." And then he's like, "My ring's outside." And then they go at it.
Yeah, then that's the beginning of the street fight. When he sort of like does like this, like he does a show.
Yeah, he kind of does the old like kicks everything off.
You can knock him down. Why don't you try knocking me down?
And then like the Don King, he's trying to break it up, and he's like, "My ring's outside," and then they go out and scratch. And then Rocky, that first exchange, he fucking smacks up Tommy.
Lights him up.
Well, because that's where he comes from. See, the thing is, Rocky V on the DL tried to throw out that shout out to his past, where they're like trying to say, they said he was a street fighter at the very beginning of the first Rocky movie when he's fighting in that ring against the chump and he fucking takes a beating and it's two brutes pretty much in a like the rules are all askew. Nobody's keeping points. People are just beating the piss out of each other. And he came from a street fighting background, like a bare knuckle street fighter, and that's what they refer to him as. But he ended seemingly in Rocky V, ended his story as just that, as a street fighter, and still coming out on top. Now we don't get a Rocky movie for a better part of 2 decades. We don't see any Rocky at all, like for I think 16 years. And then we get all this, like technology and advancement, cell phones, internet. And, we've watched these 5 Rocky movies over and over again, about 20 million times. And then Sylvester Stallone proposes to a movie studio that we make another Rocky movie. And what do you think they say? Probably not yes at first. But with the way the story's laid out, and I've always done this, and I did this even way back in George Foreman Boxing for Sega Genesis, had a lot of legends on it, right? And I always had like Rocky Marciano fight Joe Louis, or Rocky Marciano fights Muhammad Ali, or Muhammad Ali fights like a Riddick Bowe, or somebody who's up and coming at the time. and you wanted to see these fights, and they're fantasy fights. And that's how the movie sort of leads into it. You're seeing Rocky as a retired old man. Adrian has passed away, and he suffered that tragedy because she got the lady cancer, as he called it. And she passes away. He has a restaurant. He's living in Philly still, but he's living pretty well. Like, he's not super rich, but he's living off the fame that he started, and he's cooking good food, presumably for a neighborhood of people who love going to his restaurant and to love his conversation, because he's got the walls in the restaurant lined up with famous people and boxers that he's met. There's pictures of him and Ali.
Spider Rico working in the kitchen.
Spider Rico washing dishes. Spider Rico's washing dishes, who we didn't bring up in the first one, but with the guy he used to fight all the time in the church way back in the day. So Spider Rico, which Mick mentions in the first movie, is a regular at Rocky's restaurant. Rocky ends up giving him a job as a dishwasher because out of just respect to the guy, and he says that. And Rocky turns into this very, very humbled, righteous person, and that we all sort of agree with. And we see Balboa sort of having his mundane experience every day, and this fucking boxer who's up and coming, who is also a world champion too, who played the character in the movie, was put in a simulation on ESPN, and we watch this shit all the time. Right now in quarantine, you know what I do, guys, and I know you guys will probably agree. Do you watch the Players League for MLB The Show online, where you watch the players play each other in their respective teams? And Jeff McNeil was the Mets, and he played Mets in the MLB The Show. And you get to watch these simulated games. Right now they're in playoffs, and they've gotten through the regular season. So while we've been sitting home not watching baseball, some of our favorite baseball players have been grinding away at the PlayStation, playing baseball for us. And I catch a couple of games, and some of them are pretty good. And the game itself, its reactivity is pretty live, and you get to see what would have been in April and May. So, or June for that matter, depending on when we're getting baseball back. So in this movie, Rocky Balboa, you see this play out, and it brings the question to everybody's mind. Now, I got the question is for you too, and pertaining to right now. We have heavyweight boxers out there like Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, and they're all top of their game. And you have other contenders underneath them and stuff like that. Now, Rocky Balboa, you don't think is going to fight a guy like Tyson Fury, who's 6'7", who's tall as fuck, but might weigh closer to like the 230 mark when he weighs in, which is acceptable for a heavyweight match. And the heaviest Rocky ever was, I think, was 209, which they would let you fight. I think they'll let you fight to this day at heavyweight. But they brought up that comparison in the movie. Now, do you think that the Rocky Balboa of our generation, let's just say you get your Mike Tyson, do you think a Mike Tyson and a Deontay Wilder could go down today, Gabe? What do you think?
I think it wouldn't go past 2 rounds. Mike Tyson would knock him out easily. Same with Fury. Fury's got a I hate Tyson Fury.
Fury fights like Tyson. Fury fights like Muhammad Ali. He's very evasive. He fights like a tall, lanky Mayweather.
But I just feel like if he would have fought a Tyson type, like stout, short, a killer who moves forward like that, and actually has some boxing skill, unlike Wilder, then I think Tyson would have smoked both of them.
So what? Let's just say if you could get a Mike Tyson at his lightest, which was I think was 219. I think he fought at 219 or 20, like maybe 20 something. It was over 200 pounds he fought at. But after weigh-in, obviously we all inflate to fit up to 15 pounds heavier. Let's just say he fights like Canelo Alvarez at his walk-in. Like, let's just say Canelo Alvarez doesn't cut weight to 156, and he stays at his 180. And you get a Mike Tyson at a lean 200, or you know what I mean? I think he's gonna outpunch. Obviously, lay out Canelo Alvarez. I think, right? Like any of these guys from the past, we're probably gonna lean towards. So,
yeah, I just feel like the fighters from back then were a lot more like there was just more quality heavyweights all around. Like now, you really just have like those two and Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz.
Yeah.
But I mean, comparing them to them, because like I feel like Wilder's very clumsy, so I feel like Tyson would have exposed that with like his head movement. I personally, even though I don't like him, but even though he is an evasive fighter, Fury, I just feel like Fury wouldn't be able to handle Tyson.
The reach match is no good. I don't really
Yeah.
like the reach match. Like, so let's just let's just say this, Phil. Let me give this to Phil. Let's just say you have like a George Foreman fight an Anthony Joshua. You know, because I guess Foreman was a taller fighter, you know, or a Lennox Lewis, who was a taller fighter as well. And you give them an Anthony Joshua, or you give them, like, how do you feel that would fare from the older boxer to the newer boxer?
I mean that's a good one. Lennox Lewis, especially because he's a taller guy, and I think he beats Deontay Wilder. I think he's definitely more technical. I think George Foreman, Deontay Wilder is more of like a style as far as like styles make matchups. I feel like those guys are going to go toe to toe, and whoever's got the better chin is going to win. So I think if I'm a promoter, I'd rather have that fight because I think, to Gabe's point, I think Mike Tyson beats him just because he's more technical. I think Tyson Fury, on the other hand, as much as I like Mike Tyson, I think because of your point, Ryan, I think because of the reach, I even though I think if Tyson did catch him, he could probably knock him down like Deontay did. But I just think that Tyson Fury's reach is going to be too much. And I think kind of Lennox Lewis, like kind of,
Longer
set the game
arms.
plan. Yeah, set the game plan for that, and then eventually, fucking starch Tyson, which was hard to watch. Being a Tyson fan, seeing him get beat up like that bad, and I think Tyson Fury, unfortunately, would do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, so like now you see it this way, and in the movie, I think they had Rocky going over, right? This guy, right?
Yeah,
They had
the
Rocky going
simulation.
over.
In the virtual,
Yeah, in the virtual. So that's what led into this thing, and it's getting this fucking. I guess in the movie he's like 60, right, or in his 60s, getting him thinking like, yo, I'm retirement age, like in a real job, like not boxing. Well, not like boxing's not real, but in an actual, like average Joe career. You're at that retirement age, and you're gonna come back and do this. It's like, yeah, you're physically able to do this. And as I brought it up earlier in the podcast, we had Duke coming up with these fucking lines. Now, just a quick lead into it. You have media hype. He's talking to his son. His son's like, don't do it. I don't talk to you because of all this hype. Everybody treats me like Rocky's son. He still has that turmoil going on with his son for 20 years, even after Rocky 5. Mm-hmm. And Milo, this guy's a great fucking actor from Heroes, Ventimiglia. He was the perfect casting for his son. And I believe they did a great job casting this movie. They brought back Creepo chick. What's her name? They brought back Marie. She ends up working at the restaurant. Her son's like being sort of semi mentored by Rocky, just as being a good guy, not fighting or anything. But Rocky accepts the challenge to go through with the real life version of this virtual fight, and Duke goes through the list, and this is just to get it off my chest early on my favorite line of the movie. One of my favorite lines of the movie is number 2, is when Duke lays down, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't run. All we're going to do is work on, what does he say? He says, blunt force trauma. And he's like, and I'm like, oh my God, how are you going to amp me up? I'm questioning myself the whole beginning of this movie, sitting in a theater watching this. I'm like, what's going to get me on board with this? I'm not even sold yet. This old guy ain't fighting anybody until Duke says that. When Duke says, blunt force, and he goes one more time, trauma. And I'm like, I think Duke will kick his ass because of the confidence that he has.
I bet Duke was a bad motherfucker back in the day.
Hell yeah. So going into that, like leading into that whole thing, going full circle, do you think this was a good swan song for not only Rocky, but let's just say Duke, because he's like a secondary character that everybody sort of seemingly just puts to the side, doesn't forget about, but puts to the side. But Mick had his last hurrah with the first two Rockies. You know what I mean? Apollo Creed had his last hurrah when he led Rocky to that championship against Clubber Lang. This is Duke's last hurrah. This is the last time he's going to train somebody to prove a point, and he doesn't want to be discredited. So he's got something to fight for as well. Like, not only Rocky, but Duke does too, and you see his enthusiasm. And that montage, as they always do, is extremely entertaining to watch this old bastard fucking kick ass. And, like, were you on board with that, Gabe? Gabe, were you on board with that whole old guy coming out of fucking retirement to kick ass in that montage?
Yeah, because we've seen it in real life. We've seen it in George Foreman, Michael Moore. So just based off of that alone,
it could happen.
After them doing the simulation and Mason the Line Dixon getting offended and wanting to fight him in real life. Yeah, and he always has the puncher's chance because Rocky can fucking swat.
Real thing. Justin Gaethje proves that, puncher's chance, man. You get a guy who could fucking lay one good shot and they could fucking make world history. And it's true. You get guys like Randy Couture. You get guys like you said, like George Foreman. You get guys who come into it later in the game who end up proving themselves. George Foreman was a great example because I didn't believe, even when I was 12 years old, that a 40-year-old man could go and beat a 25-year-old dude. I didn't think that was possible. I thought 40. I'm nearing 40, by the way, and I'm sure we're all fucking beating around that fucking milestone.
Mm-hmm.
If not have passed it.
I'm knocking on that door. Gabe's already there. We're knocking on that door.
If not have passed it already, yes, have passed that milestone. So we know, and we want to believe that it's totally possible that 40 is the new 30, and George Foreman proved that early, so it did fuel to that. Maybe Rocky could do it. Maybe Rocky could kick this fucking guy's ass. Or it was like that old dude in the bus. You remember that YouTube video where he punches that fucking young punk out in the face?
Yes.
He's like yelling at the Vietnam vet.
Mm.
It's like you could almost sort of jump on the bandwagon with that. And I was also sold too, even though I was skeptical coming into the movie. But I have to buy a ticket because I love Rocky. So I went to go see it anyway. So he fights this young dude. And he pulls that he ends up breaking his hand on Rocky. Rocky's so fucking rock hard that he breaks his fucking hand on him. And to make a long story short, we all know how this fucking ends. It ends like the first one. Rocky doesn't win, but he wins because everybody's cheering him as he comes out of the arena. He lost on points because he couldn't keep up with the speed of the young guy, but he had the tenacity and the durability and the know-how and the toughness in his abilities to persevere and the great
speech.
Keep moving forward. Now, this is what I wanted to say. My favorite line, now getting into our favorite lines, is that the favorite line that we're all going to agree on when he tells Milo, when he tells his son, it's not about how many times you can hit, it's about how many times you get hit and you get right back up. That is so inspiring. It's probably, I don't know why Tony Robbins doesn't use this in some of his motivational speeches, because it's the most motivational speech ever made in a fucking movie, hands down.
Great. Definitely great. Yeah.
Great.
So telling his son to believe in himself, fuck what people think. You know what I mean? Like, who cares what they think? And that's when his son pretty much quits his job to obviously train with his dad, so he could train with his dad one last time. But yeah, that for me, I agree. That's the best line in that whole
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what about you, Phil? Did that touch your heart as well? Did it hit a soft spot?
Oh yeah, so totally. I mean, as much as you're watching it, there's a part of you that's like, come on, you're fucking 6 years old. You're gonna fight one of the best boxers on the planet at that time, as far as the movie's concerned. But as a guy who used to pride himself in saying that he's not gonna quit a sport until he's physically unable to, and then obviously I didn't stick to that. You appreciated the fact that he still wanted to do it. It was. I still remember the first in Rocky 2 when he's just going to the gym to do the bitch work, the clean spit buckets.
And the guy spits. The guy spits in the bucket.
Yeah.
on him. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "What are you doing here? Like, you're fucking Rocky." And he's like, "I got to be around it." So like that, like I appreciated that. Like as far like in any aspect he could, he just wanted to be around that sport. Like so like it hit me in all the right fields.
Can I mention two funny lines?
Totally relate. I could totally. Yeah, go for it.
Two funny lines is one of them is when Paulie's talking about the restaurant and Rocky tells him something. He goes Mexican Italian food cooked by a bunch of Mexicans ain't so special, Rocky.
Yeah. the thing is, you know what? This is the thing. It's Paulie so honest to a fault. In the movie, it's acceptable because we all know somebody like that who lives and just says how they feel, and it's sort of true, But the Mexicans cook great food all around the board. I've been to hibachi kitchens where the fucking food was fantastic, and I've been to Italian food restaurants where the food was fantastic, and everybody in the back who's cooking the food was probably from Central America or Mexico, and the food was always great. And that's sort of true. And it's funny because Paulie's still that old school, neighborhood guy who's maybe a mildly racist,
especially in Rocky 3.
He's mildly racist, but it's acceptable because you're going to be he's the grandpa, And he walks in drunk after getting laid off, right?
And the funny thing is, if you grew up in Brooklyn, everybody knows a Paulie.
Everybody does.
Everybody knows someone who thinks like Paulie, that old school mentality of unfortunately not being so accepting of other cultures.
Oh man, I could give you whole blocks. Like that. I could give you whole blocks full of people just like that, and I could literally give you the number of cross streets, and you could go there today, and it's probably just exactly like that. So
another funny line, quick one. Sorry, I just want to give you the second one. It's another borderline Paulie line, but it's funny because he looks at the kid. I forgot what the kid's name was. Steph.
Oh, Marie's kid.
Yeah, he looks at Marie's kid and he goes, "Who's the criminal?" And then Rocky says something to him, and then he goes, "Hide the silverware."
No, wait a minute. He also says something, right? He goes, "Hide the silverware." He's like, and he's always half drunk when he says it. Paulie, throughout all of these movies, throughout all of these Rocky movies, he's always fucking half drunk when he says it. He's always like kicking a hooch. He's been working at this meat packing plant for fucking 40 fucking years, probably drink every day, and we all know a guy like that. We could all tell you fucking stories, like some dude that you knew at work that was like that. And Paulie just finally got laid off. He goes into Rocky's restaurant with meat. He's holding the meat. Remember, he's holding the meat when he's walking in. He's fucking drinking, and he goes up, and Marie's like, "I don't know who this is, but this guy just stormed in." And he's like, "Oh, I'll go take care of it." And he walks into the back of the kitchen. And part of the funny things that you're saying, Gabe, that Paulie says is he walks in, he sees Spider Rico washing dishes, and he goes, "Is that Spider Rico? Is that fucking Spider Rico?"
He says, "Didn't you
knock that bum out?"
Paulie's gold. I want someone to
Paulie's
make a YouTube video just on Paulie's one-liner.
Yeah.
Like, give me like 10 minutes of Paulie.
But we see this movie play out, and the one last time, and we get the modern montage with Duke leading up to the fight. He doesn't win the fight, but he wins our hearts one last time, and we seemingly are thinking, for even a few years after that there's not going to be another Rocky movie. It was a great ending. That would have been a fantastic ending, and not to mention, just to be brief about it, because they are new and everybody's probably seen these two movies if they haven't gone through the backlog of all the rest of the Rocky movies, which I believe everybody has. I think all of our significant others have seen the Rocky movies, correct? I know you had Nicole go through the marathon, didn't you, Gabe?
Yeah, she's a big fan. It's basically one of her top movies now because of how much I loved the story of him believing in himself, and I sold her on watching the movie because it was a love story.
Yeah, because it is.
It is though.
I told my wife the same thing, and thanks to you, Gabe, I appreciate your ability to convince Nicole, because Nicole's influence influenced my wife after me breaking her balls for 5 years to watch it. If 5 years into our relationship, she finally folded, and I bought it on Blu-ray, and we watched all the movies up to Balboa, and she watched Creed 1 and Creed 2 as they came out in the theaters with me. But she watched all the movies, and she was definitely not disappointed and happy that she got to watch them. Your significant other, Phil, is she privy to all the Rocky movies?
She is privy. She's not as big a fan as I'd like her to be, but she's she likes the love part of it. But I mean, I think is tired of the Rocky analogies and all that other stuff. So
I guess that was the next question. The analogies, the pop culture references are gold because they're everywhere. Everybody uses them. We've been using these Rocky pop culture references forever, and I guess I guess that's sort of one of the incentives that I got my wife to watch the movies was you're not going to get any of these jokes because she wants to be in on all the jokes. I almost saw a cat's butthole. I think I almost
that's
saw
my cat. Yeah, my cat. I'm charging my phone and my cat's trying to eat it.
So just to be quick, it's pop culture gold as references, and that was definitely incentive for her to watch it too because she wanted to be in on all the jokes. Now, going into the modern era, and even though Balboa does cross into the modern era, we have two more movies to cap this off, and in Creed 1 and Creed 2. And in Creed 1, in brief, is pretty much, in a nutshell, it's Apollo Creed's, illegitimate son surfaces, and his widow takes him under her wing out of juvenile hall, and he wants to be a boxer. And he's got that fighting spirit. He wants to take up after his dad. He's got this shadow hanging behind him. And Rocky doesn't know that Apollo had an illegitimate child, which is, listen, athletes, skeet. They're spreading the fucking seed around. Something's going to land somewhere. Some basketball players got their kid's got a half sibling in St. Louis, and they're from fucking Oakland, and they don't know. And this is the story that does pop up. Like I said, Sylvester Stallone going into actual sports occurrences and stories, trying to find fuel for his creativity. And this is something that could totally possibly happen. So in Adonis Creed, you get this kid who is found pretty much by his widow and raises him, and he knows who his dad is, and he's got a little bit of privilege, and he tries to go the roughneck way by training in his dad's gym in LA, and he's got a lot of I think Duke's son, right, runs the gym. Is that and so he's got a lot of this background there that he wants to be involved in, and they all know the situation. He's not promoting himself as that, but when he makes a decision to do so, he goes and he seeks Rocky, who at this point is now not only a widow, because Adrian passed away from the lady cancer, but Paulie's passed away too. Paulie's not around also. And so he's got nobody, and he's a lonely man, but all he's got is his restaurant and his stories. So now the baton is getting passed in this, and it's going from Rocky to Creed. And we're seeing this happen, and he actually, his foe in this story is a real-life champion boxer who when he lost his title, he got knocked the fuck out in real life. The guy that he fights at the end of this movie got brutally knocked out. I watched this guy go stiff like this. Like when they get their hands out like a mummy and they go back? He got knocked out pretty bad. I was really scared for him when I watched that fight. But, so Adonis Creed has to fight this dude who's a badass, verifiably badass in real life. And Rocky's got to help him but doesn't want him. Rocky doesn't want to help him. Did you? I mean, we all know that Rocky's going to eventually help him, but at the very beginning, not to be rude to Adonis Creed, but I was like, who the fuck are you? You're just going to go and ask for people's help? Like, you can't do it on your own like these guys did? I sort of felt a little slighted by it, even though I like Michael B. Jordan as an actor. I really like him as an actor. And I really like the lady who played Valkyrie, who ends up playing his love interest, the deaf girl. She's a good actress too. And everybody was really good in this. And actually, it was a quality movie. It wasn't bad. And they really didn't go the route that I thought they were going to go. And I was like, Creed is going to be like Rocky V. Why are they doing it again? But what was your take on the whole movie as far as like chasing your father's legacy? The father that you didn't know. Like I know, Phil, you knew your dad. I didn't know my dad, not to get too emotional or anything like that. I'm not, trust me, I'll say this with a fucking smile on my face. But I was acquainted with my father, but not well acquainted with my father. But there's these things that happen that sort of touched on me as far as like, okay, well, there's legacy. You know, are we going to chase after what our family did, or are we going to try to make something of our own without having to have that bar set? Did that affect you guys the same way, even having had that male influence in your life or not having that male influence in your life? Gabe, what was your take on Adonis Creed's chase for his, I guess, his dead father's approval?
I mean, I understood it. Obviously you could see he has a passion for wanting to fight and to get better. So by him reaching out to Rocky after the gym in Los Angeles, or after Duke's son basically rejects him, I understood it. I mean, I kind of felt a little like you, because Rocky could have easily been like, get the fuck out of here, and he could have easily given up too, but he didn't. He stuck around. He tried to befriend him. You know what I mean? Started going to the gym on his own, not telling anybody that he knew Rocky until he actually, I guess, gained some of Rocky's trust or whatever,
Yeah.
and to win. Obviously, I didn't have a father figure in my life, so I can't really speak on that aspect of it. But if I did, and if he was a fighter, I would probably want to do just as well as he did, if not better. So that's just how my mentality for it would be. I always compare the first Creed to honestly to the first Rocky.
Yes.
Like as far as like, there's a lot of similarities to it, even though Adonis has some privilege because he was raised by Apollo's wife. But like similar as far as like having a love story, him not having that much belief in himself, gaining belief in himself through
And Rocky and Mick were like, Rocky became Mick. Like that's what happened. It didn't happen in 5, but it happened in Creed. Yeah, like there's the parallel. Yeah, and I always thought that too. I always thought that there was that, like, okay, well, they try to make these similarities happen to where history repeats itself, and if you don't learn from it, you're doomed to repeat it over and over and over again. So that was part of that. I feel like the story was too, as far as the redeeming factor for Adonis Creed. Do you feel the same way as far as like his redemption to his deceased father, Phil? Like as far as like, like was it like the proper move to approach Rocky like that, the way that he did?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I could definitely, for me, like, I mean, like, I got into baseball because of my dad, I mean, and then when I started playing, like, as I got older, like, I wanted to be better than him. So, like, I could see, like, the whole, like, legacy thing and, like, wanting to compete with that. So, like, I mean, that's how ultimately I got into the sport I love the most, because I wanted to, be like my dad. But I mean, I liked it. I liked that, he didn't have success. I liked that he had to fight adversity, and if anything, it was harder for him because Creed was so great, and he was obviously like a relatively unknown. And even if he got to be good, he was always going to be compared to his dad, which
Shadow.
yeah. So like, I mean, I like that. Like Rocky was the ultimate middle person, and he was the perfect person to groom him and like coach him, because he knew his dad, and obviously he knew his dad's talent and ability, and he knew that this guy obviously had natural talent from Apollo. So he was able to be that perfect guy to get him to get where he wanted to get.
Now, this movie has a montage that is not like the other ones in the past. This one is more of like a hip hop montage, which I like for it, because it gives it its own personality to the movie, saying that this is, yes, it's a Rocky movie. It's a Rocky movie, but it's not Rocky's movie. This movie is Adonis Creed's movie, and he's the character who's going to redeem all of them. Adonis Creed right now has on his back, he has his father, he has Rocky, he has Mick and Duke. He's got the legacy of these people behind him. You know what I mean? He's got Duke's son. He's got Rocky, who has the legacy of Mick behind him, because you don't get Rocky without Mick. And he's got his father looming over him too, which the way that this story ends and stuff is, obviously you're going to see this and then know that, okay, well, we need a happy ending out of a movie like this. So we have to see Adonis do it, so they don't end it the way Rocky 1 did, and he does fare well. He has a great career in this, and in these two movies, there's nothing really notable as far as lines go. But I'll give you guys the room if you guys have any quotable lines from this movie. Even though the movie's a great movie of substance, I just don't have anything that really catches to me, probably because I haven't had as much exposure to it as I had the other earlier movies. So,
yeah, I agree. The biggest highlight, obviously, was the second part where it tied Drago's son into Rocky 4 and all that kind of good stuff. This was definitely great because it was good to see. I mean, as we could all probably agree on, any Rocky movie that comes out, whether it does good or not, we're going to watch it.
yeah.
So it was kind of cool to see the legend live on, and I kind of hope it stops here because I don't want to see like Creed 3 where Rocky's dead. It would just fuck me up.
That's what I'm saying, because that's what's going to happen, because I'm not sure, and I know that I may have a couple of drinks in me right now, so it escapes me on whether or not we find out Rocky has cancer in 1 or 2.
1.
We find out he has cancer in 1, right? And that also has the air to it that there's something more to fight for other than, there's my own personal redemption. It's like I have to do this for Rocky because you got to fight for this guy because he fought for all of us. In a sense, he fought for all of us. When he fought Drago, he fought for all of us, and he fought for Adonis Creed to redeem his father. He beat the crap out of Drago so that this, not knowing that this kid was alive, that this kid could have a legacy to live for and to live up to. And, he did end up gaining that, like that legacy. And he brought it into the next movie, which sort of goes in the way that Rocky 2 goes into Rocky 3, that Adonis Creed is doing relatively well. And in Creed 2, we have the rise of a Drago Jr., who isn't introduced like his father was. He's introduced like Clubber Lang was. They're introducing Drago Jr. like he's this Clubber Lang, destroy everybody. Yeah, he's Drago's son, but who gives a fuck? He's just a monster who's about to beat the crap out of every fucking heavyweight out there. And you have Adonis Creed, who right now isn't approaching this fucking dude like how his dad approached Drago, like, I'm going to take this guy out. You get this guy looming in the background like Lang was, who was like, this is the guy who's going to destroy me. He's coming after me. He wants me because I'm Rocky's student. Rocky doesn't want to train me anymore. At this point, Rocky's still iffy on whether or not he wants to get back into the whole fucking shit with him, right? Isn't he sort of like, I just got over cancer. I don't have the energy for this anymore. Adonis Creed's girl is like blowing up because she's a musician who happens to be doing the DJ circuit. She's, going around the world as he's going around the world. She's traveling with him to Vegas and all this shit to fight all these big fights and make the big money. But Drago Jr.'s looming in the background. Now, I guess he does win over Rocky to fucking get him to join his squad. But there's that reminiscent scene of him, Adonis Creed, and everybody at the press conference, and Drago Jr. is there with Ivan Drago. It's a verifiable fucking reunion. It's the first time Rocky's seeing fucking Drago. And you're getting that feeling that Drago, the feeling he had when he got beaten by Rocky is still there. He's still like, I wasn't defeated by you. I was defeated by my country and my ex-wife. And then you also get that scene later on in the movie where she's like at dinner with all the fucking dignitaries and like the important people and stuff. And you're like, what the fuck, holy shit. Like, I didn't think Brigitte Nielsen would be cool with being in Stallone movies since they've been divorced for like 30 years or whatever. But she shows up, and you see how that affects Drago and how it affects his son. Now, as soon as I seen that, what the fucking end of the movie's going to be. So this movie was a good movie, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I was entertained the whole way through, and I give it positive reviews. But my only negative take from this whole thing is the predictability after you've seen that dinner scene with Brigitte Nielsen, and she comes in, and Drago are both like, taken back by it. The Drago Jr. didn't want to see his mom. You knew he was going to lose because of that. Was that what you guys felt, Phil? Was that what did you feel that way? Like when you seen her walk in on that scene, you knew that fate was sealed.
Yeah, it did kind of messed it up. I mean, I like that they fought twice too. The kind of like
like Clubber Lang, like Clubber Lang, yeah.
Yeah, and I like that they combined it in one movie too, because it's like I feel like everyone's kind of, like I said, as much as we love it, like they could only squeeze this Rocky towel so much. So I mean, I like that it kind of ended that way. Like I said, I don't want to see another Rocky where he's dead or whatever. It's like, but it was kind of cool to tie. I mean, and the restaurant scene when Drago and Rocky get face to face was fucking awesome.
There's a mutual respect by the both of them. You see that, like that. There's like we both know what we did to each other, and it's not about that. We just got to play. We got to play the game the way we're playing. This is about them and not about us.
Yeah, he tells Adonis that too. He's like he's broken things in me that still ain't being fixed. Like, I mean, it was kind of cool. Like, because like you said, he hated him so much that I'm sure he didn't want to give him any respect because he killed his best friend.
Yeah.
So like but at the end of the day, fighters, they always do this. Like they wind up after they share that exchange, like Rory McDonald and Robbie Lawler. Like, they'll always get together and say like, wow, we fucking and I was rooting for McDonald for that fight too. So it was hard for me to see him get that
second
close.
one. The second one?
The second one, yeah. Well, both ones, to be honest. I really liked Rory. I thought he was going to be the next GSP. I mean, and not to say that he's not a super talented fighter or not, that he never did that. Yeah. But like, he came from the same camp, blah, blah, blah. But not to get offside, get off track. That was kind of, what I was.
Don't worry, Phil. I'll have you guys on an MMA panel. Don't worry about it. I already have a plan for me and another 4 guys to do an MMA panel. So I'll be glad to have you guys on that motherfucker later on too. But yeah, like I definitely fucking got that. What about you, Gabe? Gabe, like, did you feel like this, like by watching it that Drago Jr.'s fate was sealed in that dinner scene, and also to the whole to the effect of what Phil said. I also feel that Drago felt bad about killing Creed. In that the dinner scene at the restaurant, not the dinner scene, but between the dinner scene and the restaurant scene with Brigitte Nielsen and then the one with Rocky, with Ivan Drago, you felt like there was the defeat of his ex-wife, and then there was I felt bad about killing Apollo Creed, and that they had a mutual respect for each other, Rocky. And so did you feel like it was predictable that the movie was going to end the way that it did with Adonis Creed?
I think at that moment I still felt like, ultimately I kind of knew that Creed would win the match. I always kind of wanted him to win the title in the first match instead of getting DQ'd. I would have liked to see Adonis regain the belt instead of having the DQ win. But for me, the part where it like solidifies that he was going to lose is when she like walks out on him during the second fight. I think it's like the 6th round, and she like walks out.
He gets out halfway through the fight.
Yeah,
like, there's so much fight left.
And
so fucked up.
He notices it, and there's obviously she gave up on him. And I feel like right there he was mentally checked out, and then obviously Adonis imposes his will on him, and you got to give him credit for obviously for his character in the movie for not stopping and trying to fight. But at that time he was already gassed out, and Adonis was just peppering him with shots.
He had that fucking, I got to do this. Like, I got to take out, you know what I mean? It's sort of like, I guess, like the redeeming his father in a sense. And, like it's revenge, and the whole question behind this also movie too, aside from Adonis Creed being the main character, is could Rocky go one more round? And he does with Adonis Creed, like as far as like living through him. And his mentorship and his leadership ended up giving Adonis the skill and the know-how and everything. He doesn't need anything else after that. Everything that Rocky could give him, he gave him, and he went and he closed that chapter in that book. Hopefully, this is a book that's closed because as Phil said, And do you agree, Gabe, that there shouldn't be any more Rocky movies? Do you agree, Gabe?
If he's alive, I'll take one more.
One
I'll
more.
take one
I'll
more.
tell you what. I'll take a 10-minute video of
He's still gotta get
Rocky
revenge.
Balboa. Yeah, he's still got to get revenge.
He has to get revenge against pretty Ricky Conlon.
If they have a 10-minute video on YouTube of Ricky Conlon and Rocky Balboa playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots, or fucking Tyson's Punch Out, or fucking some, like 2-player game. You can't play 2 players in Punch Out. I totally forget about that. That'll be on the fucking Nintendo episode of CanceledCast. But I would totally probably watch that. But in the entirety, I think it's a good way to end it, because Rocky IV was a like pop culture iconic movie that, even though Rocky did it, if Creed had a son, you need his redemption too. And I feel like they ended it pretty well. And I feel like they played the DQ thing in pretty good, because they never did that. That was something that they did that was like new to the franchise. And it was also new to a lot of people who aren't privy to fight sports, to know that it could end in a draw. It could end in a DQ. If anybody knows John Jones, he throws thumbs and illegal elbows, and we seen him get DQ'd. And you see these guys who are verifiable, superstars in fighting, get DQ'd for stupid things, namely, as we all know, Mike Tyson fighting Evander Holyfield's ear off. So you do see these things happen in real life, and they played it in the movie. Adonis Creed comes out on top, as he should, and it's pretty much a great send-off to Rocky, as far as like him being a major contributing factor to pop culture movies. And it's 8 fucking movies. They didn't go as long as Star Wars did with the 9 in the series. But if they had a couple of Rocky prequels, like what happened between 3 and 4, or or what happened between 2 and 3, if they did one of those, I might watch like a webisode or like a
I always wanted
Netflix
to see
special.
a prequel on his younger years. Like I wanted to see things like things about like how he grew up, what type of parental abuse did Rocky take from his dad, because he would tell him he's not smart and he would have to only use his muscle and things like that. What got him into boxing in the first place?
Good fucking idea, dude. I'm telling you, that's a good idea. I thought that too. Like if they did like a Rocky Year 1, or a Rocky 0, or Rocky .0, or something like that.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I wrote Sylvester Stallone. He hasn't responded back yet.
Come on, yo, Sly. Listen, my boy Gabe. Yo,
Hey,
Sylvester. Yo, Sly. Do me a favor. I got this guy Gabe. He's a Brooklyn guy. You did a movie called Lords of Flatbush, which is about Brooklyn. I don't know about the 6 Degrees of Separation, but he's a good guy. He loves your movies. He's a fan of Rambo. He's a fan of The Expendables. Give him a fucking shot with this. It's a good fucking idea.
Maybe a Paulie backstory. Paulie was in the military.
Well, he was, and he was also friends with Rocky for years before that. Yeah. So now that we're done with the movies, do you think, and then going into that, I have jotted down right here on my notes, obviously no more in the future. We try not to see any more in the future. We don't think they're going to do a Creed 3. We're going through this whole what if, like if they did something, a prequel might be more in play. But, aside from all that moving forward, let's just say Rocky ends here. Let's talk about the legacy. The legacy of these movies have inspired everything from other sports movies. Like, you're not going to remember the Titans or The Warrior or Southpaw. You're not going to watch these movies without this. You're not going to watch, all these other sports movies, like even Major League doesn't exist without a Rocky. It started a whole genre of movies that became part of our culture in general. We love watching the underdog compete to jump on top, and Rocky created that and kept that tradition moving from movie to movie. It inspired pop culture, like our references, guys. Honestly, in a day, Gabe. What do you say? 2 or 3 Rocky references a day, maybe more? What do you say?
At least every day, or even just talking to friends, bullshitting. It's just become a part of everyday life, and joking around and just watching the movies over and over. And whenever there's a marathon on, you watch it. I love it. Reminisce. always reciting the same lines over and
Yeah,
over.
over and over, and they don't lose their impact too, no
No,
matter
it's
how
a
many
very
times you
big
say it.
influence. Very big
Yeah.
influence in my life.
So, like, Gabe, I also have a question too, and then I'm gonna pass it to Phil. Um, it also are like I don't think we could even argue about this. Has influenced real life athletes
Yeah.
and also the average Joe,
Doesn't Manny Pacquiao
like
come
me,
out
you,
to
and
Eye of the Tiger? Yeah. So, like, yeah, definitely influences real life
I feel
athletes.
even your average Joe baseball player. I feel like even like we have let's just say you got young guys like an Aaron Judge or a Pete Alonso who if they hear Eye of the Tiger get a little amped up too.
Yeah.
So like obviously it does pass through the generations. It's a very transcendent from one to the next. Phil, do you agree that a lot of our sports culture, albeit movies or athlete creation or pop culture in our references, do you believe Rocky left a major mark in our culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he's the first one that kind of also showed you what like a training camp looks like, as far as like a fighter. I mean, obviously, it was very short, and like not a lot of guys are gonna like tricep press like 600 pounds worth of like rocks.
Well,
But
you
like,
needed in a montage.
yeah,
You needed in a
exactly.
montage.
It was good to see like the process of getting ready for a fight. And like you said, they hit all the nails on the head. Like as far as the soundtrack, what he was doing, to see the kind of shape. Obviously, it was chemically enhanced, but to see the kind of shape he got into for those fights, it was cool.
Firing, yeah.
It
I
still
mean,
takes desire.
yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely does. It does, like, it gets the blood flowing. And sometimes if I need a little bit of inspiration, if I'm feeling blue, and we all go through our moments of, like depression or, like anxiety or whatever that we deal with, especially like in today's day and age, like we're dealing with this, like this lockdown situation and stuff. And, we all go through these myriad of emotions. And Rocky is something that if I put it on, it's like, yo, fuck this. I'm fighting COVID right now, barefisted. I don't give a shit right now. I'm going out and I'm gonna start swinging, which I don't recommend you doing without a mask or gloves on. But like still, like it still it gets you moving. Now, just to cap this podcast off, right now we're at a record of 2 hours and 40 minutes, the longest podcast that I've done yet. And rightfully so, because it was a beefy subject. Cannot leave any of this out.
Mm-hmm. We
I
ain't
would
going
love.
down no more.
We ain't going down no more. And to send it off into the 12th round, we've gone the full 12 with this, or the full 8 actually, the full 8, because we did eight movies. I'd like to cap this off with a fantasy matchup.
Ooh.
And I was originally going to think to give you guys 2 or 3 choices, but I'm only going to give you one. Fantasy matchup with any Rocky character, and it could be anybody. I mean, preferably, like it would be a fighter in the movie, but you could say if you want, I want to see Adrian fight Marie. I don't give a shit, whatever the fuck you want, but
she's gonna get their revenge for her calling Rocky Creepo.
Yeah.
Call my husband a creepo, you little twat. So Adrian would never say that. I don't think she used the curse word once. I don't think anybody in the movies did except for Paulie. So Phil, give me your fantasy matchup with any Rocky character.
All right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna keep it in a quick, what should be a quick fight and a slugfest. I'm gonna go Clubber Lang against Drago.
Ooh, Drago Senior.
Go Drago Senior, yes, not Drago Junior. Yes, in their prime.
All right.
Damn,
Nice.
Someone's getting knocked out.
Someone's getting fucked up, dude. That's that
That
damage.
ain't going past the first. It shouldn't go past the first round, realistically. But you never know.
That's not pain. That's torture.
Yeah, that's just like brace
They're not
yourself.
broken.
Someone's getting knocked out.
They're not broken. They're demolished. What about you, Gabe? Gabe, fantasy matchup.
He stole mine, so I guess I'll try to think of a different one. If I was to pick one, I guess I would choose the opposite. I would choose Apollo Creed versus Mason the Line Dixon.
Ooh.
Ooh. Mason Dixon had the longer reach. He had the longer reach, and he took it to Rocky, too. He also took it to him in Balboa, but an old Rocky. It was hard for him. He broke his hands on an old Rocky. So
Yeah, if he does it against Apollo's lighting him up like a Christmas tree for the next like 6-7 rounds.
You know,
I think he breaks his hand. I think he breaks his hand on Apollo's ribs, and that's how Apollo wins.
Ooh, okay.
Can I give you a second one just for the hell of it? Tommy the Machine Gun versus Drago's kid, Victor.
All right, so you stole mine. That was mine. Thank you, Gabe. No, because you definitely you saved. We could cut this off at the 45 mark then, because that was exactly what I was gonna say, Gabe. I want to see, because honestly, Tommy Morrison was he was a star boxer in his time, and Drago's son is also, I believe, he's a fighter as well, correct?
Yeah.
And comparably have about the same size. They're both white guys, so you know that they're gonna fucking try to prove something to each other, because they feel like, whatever, like, I'm just a white boxer. What am I gonna do? They're definitely gonna take it to each other. And I agree. That was my match out of all of them. And I had shot this via text to you guys, and I know that that it would be a definite slugfest, and I feel in that one, like what Phil said, it would definitely end in some sort of a knockout. Like somebody's getting knocked the fuck out.
Yeah, that ain't going past 3. It shouldn't anyway.
I say 2.5 rounds. Yeah, 2.5 rounds. I say
Dixon Creed. I say Creed in the 12th round wins.
all the way.
Yeah, I go Creed. I go Creed decision.
Yeah, they go the distance a lot. Those guys both have a lot of stamina. At least in the movies, they have a lot of stamina. I just want to say thank you to both you guys. We're going to be signing off soon. You guys, if you're on YouTube and you subscribe to shit, subscribe to Phil Nicholas, Phil the Thrill. He is on YouTube throwing up content, interesting shit. Keep your eyes on it. Hopefully, I'll be invited on soon to get to talk about baseball. I need to talk about baseball with somebody.
You stole what was going to be my. We're stealing each other's lines tonight, which is great. But I just want to thank you because, like I said before we got on, you're one of the major contributors to me starting it. So you will certainly be on, and I will be picking your brain for a topic, and then we could just hammer it out.
And roll it out. All right. Hell yeah.
We can have a podcast about the potential new divisions with the DH.
Yeah, the 3 divisions with the DH rule.
I didn't want to get sidetracked because I know with all the lack of baseball, we could have went down that road forever. But we definitely should do a podcast on that format because I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it. And I think, like I said, we could see if that's going to be the future of baseball because it might be.
It's crazy. 3 divisions, 30 teams a division. It's fucking nuts. How do you come up with the World Series with that? I do not know, but we will find out in the coming months. And that wraps it up for tonight. Thank you guys for coming. Gabe, thank you so much. Phil, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And this is CanceledCast with Ryan Murphy signing off. I hope you all have a good night. Peace out, guys.
Peace, guys. See you soon.
See you later.